It takes a lot to surprise the seasoned police of the NYPD. But in 2016, a perplexing case leaves New York City detectives and the city itself in utter shock.
The media coverage for this case was off the charts. People were obsessed.
It's as bizarre a case as you'll ever see.
You have this beautiful woman just basically comatose in lingerie.
There were pills laying around. She staged the scene to make it look like it was a suicide.
As police delve in, the evidence quickly leads to more mysteries than answers.
The last thing she remembered was someone brought her pieces of cheesecake.
And investigators uncover a disturbing pattern.
She prepared fish, and I took 2 bites. That's all I remember.
The tox screen comes back as negative. It doesn't pick up on any toxin.
But a new challenge surfaces when investigators find their suspect. A notorious international seductress who's been targeting victims in at least 2 countries.
It wasn't just a poisoning, it was a stolen identity. There was a dominatrix aspect.
We found out that the person who committed this crime was wanted for murder.
And at that point, she got some fake documents and tried to blackmail her into working for them.
To locate their killer, multiple investigations unite.
She was trying to change her identity to hide who she actually was.
She said the Russian government tried to blackmail her.
She needed to do all of this so that she could never go back to Russia.
New York City is home to immigrants from every corner of the world, including several large Russian-speaking communities.
The Russian community in Brooklyn, I mean, it's very large and very varied. The majority of the people that live there are just regular people, you know. They work, they do their best, have a good life, you know, live the American dream. Automatically, there's this, like, you know, kinship, I guess, because you're from the same place.
On August 29, 2016, one of these neighborhoods becomes the scene of an unusual emergency.
911 gets a panicked phone call that there is an unconscious woman at her home in Queens.
On the line, a panicked landlord explains he found his tenant, 35-year-old Olga Svik, in dire condition.
First responders rush to the scene, assess the scene. Everything looks a little off.
She's found in her bedroom in really rough shape. She's not responsive. She's really not moving. She's pale white.
The landlord tells paramedics after not seeing Olga for 2 days, he checked on her and found her completely out of it.
This was quite bad. Our landlord sees pills all over the room. The heat was up extensively.
They look around, and they draw the only conclusion that this is probably a troubled woman. She killed herself.
Not a lot of people who commit suicide through pills throw the pills all over the room. Doesn't make sense. The fact that the heat was on extremely high. It was some 80-some plus degrees in the room. That was odd, too.
You have this beautiful woman just basically comatose in lingerie. It almost looks like if you picture what a soap opera scene would look like if you staged a dramatic end-of-life scene.
First responders immediately rush Olga to the hospital. Thankfully, emergency room doctors are able to stabilize her.
Olga was extremely lucky that she had somebody come down and check on her. She was extremely close to death and could have been dead within the next hour.
Olga displays weakness, fatigue, memory loss, disorientation. So they do a physical exam, try to figure out what's going on. One of the diagnostic tools that they use in the hospital is a urine screen. The test tries to figure out whether or not there's an amount of toxin within a particular range.
The test should reveal what kind of pills are in Olga's system. But the results are unexpected.
Her tox screen comes back as negative. It doesn't pick up on any toxin.
When nothing was raised in these test results, that was really curious.
When medical staff approach Olga with questions about what happened, she doesn't seem to remember anything, but insists this was no suicide attempt.
So the doctors at the hospital, when they do their review, they're thinking at the time, what's going on? We don't know anything about Olga. Is her story true? Does it make sense? The big question at that point is why, number one, and where's my evidence?
Olga, take one, mark.
My first name Olga, last name is Tsvyk, Tsvyk. I was born in Ukraine, in Vinnytsia. I used to work as a travel agent, so I used to travel a lot. And when in my country, in 2014, we have a war starting. I decided to just change something in my life. And I decided to try myself in United States.
Olga sought out friends in New York City who helped her find a residence.
Olga was living in a single-family home that was owned by a gentleman who lived on the ground floor.
He lived on the first floor because he's old, like 86 years old, and he were like my family. I call him my American uncle.
She lived in a sweet little neighborhood of Queens, got along and knew her neighbors really well.
She also found a new career in cosmetology.
I was excited to try something new. I started working as a lache technician. It was like my hobby before, but here it was my main job. It was a good situation for me to work around people who talks English and with the Russian community people. So yeah, it was really good.
She really made a life for herself out here, and it, by all accounts, seemed that things were going really well.
Now, just 2 years into her American dream, Olga has narrowly survived a harrowing near-death experience. Medical staff are trying to determine what happened to her, but with Olga still having no memory of it, doctors find themselves at a dead end.
The urinalysis and the blood tests come up empty. They don't have a lead to really go on.
What the hospital has is someone with an altered mental status who displays weakness, fatigue, memory loss, disorientation, but clinically and diagnostically doesn't show that anything has happened to them. So they provided Olga with fluids, they monitored her, and when her condition improved to a point, they discharged her.
I remember when I got home from the hospital, and also not all the picture, just some short moments.
When friends check on Olga a few days later, their concerns grow.
She was well enough to be discharged, but she's not well yet. She can't really talk that well. She can't really walk that well. She's certainly not herself. Her friend called Olga's sister Irina and notifies Irina that Olga's really not doing well.
When my sister got a call from my friend and she realized that something wrong with me, something not good, and she catch the first flight to New York.
When Irina arrives on August 30th and sees Olga's apartment, she's left with a sinking feeling.
She find the pills around me, around my bed.
Irina looks in the few areas that she knows Olga keeps her valuables.
The passport, the working papers, money, jewelry. All these things are missing from her house, and she knows this almost immediately.
Irina goes to the precinct and says to the police, somebody's stolen my sister's property. So Irina is reporting a larceny.
Police open an investigation and visit Olga's house the next day. Upon arrival, Olga's sister Irina fills officers in on Olga's strange illness, stating that her sister's missing property is just the beginning of her concerns.
Her sister Irina told us there were pills all over the room. That was odd.
They think I took a pills and tried to poison myself. But she knew me. She knew that I'm never gonna do that.
Irina leads officers to speak with Olga, whose gradual recovery has helped her regain foggy memories.
I remember first when my sister came into my room with the detectives. They asked me the question, and some of them I don't remember.
When Irina started talking to her, she was getting more and more information.
Before she got really ill, the last thing she remembered was someone coming over, a client of hers, Viktoriya.
She came to me every 2-3 weeks. She come all the way from the Brooklyn to Queens.
Viktoriya tells Olga that she's going to Mexico in a few days or in a day, and she absolutely needs to have her lashes fixed. She knew that she wasn't working that day. Please, 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 could she come to her apartment to get this fixed? Olga says yes.
It was Sunday. It was my day off. Usually I don't take my client at home. I didn't listen my intuition, and I say, okay, just come, and I'm gonna do it for you.
She was the last person who saw her before she got really ill.
At this point, the police are starting to say, we need to find Viktoriya.
Coming up, Olga continues to recount her brush with death.
She opened the box in front of me like this. I eat just for politeness.
This particular criminal, she's in the wind.
As police struggle to piece together what happened, more victims surface.
He didn't even exactly know how he ended up in the hospital.
I never thought about she's gonna drug me.
We put that out to other squads so they know, look out for this person.
With Olga's memories starting to surface, detectives have her walk them through what happened, starting with more details about the last person she remembers seeing, her client, Viktoriya.
She was my client, I believe, more than 6 months. She was very open. She tells me that she had beauty salon in Moscow. So like she represents herself like she's successful businesswoman.
Viktoriya had become such a regular that when she asked for an emergency touch-up, Olga agreed.
As a thank you for doing this solid favor on your day off, Viktoriya brought her pieces of cheesecake from a very famous bakery in Brooklyn.
Olga says Viktoriya's behavior seemed off.
We come up to my room, and she say, you can't understand how tasty this cake. She opened the box in front of me like this, and she picked one and she ate. It was like very fast, and she picked another one, and she left me just one piece. And I say, okay, maybe she's like hungry, I don't know. I eat, not because I was hungry or something, just for politeness.
Within a few minutes, Olga began to feel sick.
I just trying to find my bed to lying down. And I tell her, oh my God, Viktoriya, something wrong,
She started feeling weird, woozy, sick to her stomach, nauseous. She threw up off the side of the bed.
And she tells me, oh, don't worry, I'm gonna clean everything. I just remember that she came to my room with the paper towels. So, and that's it.
When Olga's sister Irina told her she'd been robbed, she suspected Viktoriya was the culprit.
I don't have my passport, I don't have my work authorization, no my money. She left in my wallet just $17. That's it. I realized she even took my perfumes,
She also believes Viktoriya drugged her as an attempt to cover her tracks.
Viktoriya, she is preparing to look me like suicide, like I poisoned myself.
It was thought that this was a staged crime scene because she's very adamant in the fact that she was drugged.
Investigators discover one piece of evidence they hope could validate Olga's story.
Inside of the trash can at Olga's house, detectives find a container with the cheesecake crumbs still in it. Immediately, this container is bagged and tagged as evidence, and it is sent in for testing.
We have the wrapper, we have part of the cheesecake, we test it, and we get nothing.
That means there is no known banned controlled substance that we can pick up in this box. There was also a DNA test that was run on it, and the DNA came back initially as belonging to a female who's not Olga's Vic.
Detectives assume the DNA belongs to Viktoriya, but without a last name, police can't even confirm Viktoriya is her real name.
The issue was, Viktoriya and Olga always met at the salon. This was the first time they met outside at her apartment, and Olga had no idea where she lived, and cops couldn't find an address.
We have a phone number for her, but she doesn't answer it.
This person doesn't seem to exist.
That's not a lot to go on. So at that point, it's simply being investigated as a larceny. And it's an open larceny.
I tell them everything what happened, but I feel like they just don't believe me. They don't trust. I think maybe they think I do drugs, maybe I overdose something,
Olga and her sister try to put the ordeal behind them. But a few days later, Olga receives a message from an encrypted phone number.
I saw the text message. It was Viktoriya. She asked me, Olga, where are you? I can reach you. What happened? Is that? And I didn't answer.
Moments later, her phone rings.
She called me, and I pick up the phone. And she asked me, Olga, what happened to you? I can reach you. I say, Viktoriya, you stolen a lot of stuff from me. You poisoned me. And you know what her answer was? She tells me, okay, so go to police.
To Olga, the message is clear.
I was scared because I feel like she wants to get done what she doesn't finish. I realized that she really wants to kill me.
It's been 1 week since Olga Svik was released from the hospital due to a mysterious illness. She believes one of her clients, Viktoriya, is the one responsible. After confronting her possible attacker over the phone, Olga comes away shaken.
So I was always like scared, always look around, you know. My friends, they always drive me to my house and they always waiting for me to watch how I get in door to the house.
With the NYPD unable to pursue her case, Olga tries her best to move forward.
Olga stayed out of work for about a week or 2 weeks, maybe more, and she ultimately returned to work sometime in mid to late September.
When I start working, it was very difficult for me. I start to take clients like one per day, you know.
One of her regular customers asked her why she had been out. And when Olga said, I was sick and I didn't feel well, the customer asked some follow-up questions.
They say, I just don't want to talk about it. I tell, I got sick, you know. And they say, somebody's poisoned me.
Her customer's reaction to the news is unexpected.
This customer said to Olga, I can't believe you're saying this to me because I happen to know somebody who over the summer went out on a date with a woman, had dinner with her, ate food, became very sick, and went to the hospital.
She tells me, maybe this is the same person. After work, she texts me, Olga, can I give you a number? His name is Ruben.
Shortly thereafter, Olga calls Ruben. Olga relays her story to Ruben, exactly how it happened, and says to him, the person that poisoned me was this woman, Viktoriya. Ruben says to her, I don't know any Viktoriya. The person that poisoned me was a woman named Anna.
He sent me her picture, and it's her. Then I was like shocked.
So at that point, they both think that they were poisoned by the same person.
Olga agrees to meet with Ruben to hear his story in detail.
I'm here 43 years. Came here 1980 from Russia, and I lived in a Russian neighborhood all this time.
Ruben says he met the woman he calls Anna on a Russian dating app 2 months ago in June 2016.
I was single at that time, you know, I was dating, checking girls out, and I met her and she gave me her number. She said she came from Russia like not long ago. I started talking to her and she was a very smart woman. She said, you like to eat? I like to cook. So I was like, of course. She said, Sunday, I'll buy some food and prepare to cook. And I was like, sure, why not?
The date was to be held at her apartment in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn.
Sunday, I went, I bought her flowers, I bought her wine, and I went to her home.
Upon arrival, Ruben says he was surprised to find her apartment empty.
I was like, where is the furniture? Carpet was rolled up. I was shocked, and she said she had a roommate, she just moved out. I was like, okay. And she said, come, the table is ready. It was a mini table. And I had my own wine. She prepared fish. I took 2 bites. I drank a wine. That's all I remember. I never thought about she's gonna drug me.
Ruben says 2 days later, he woke up in a hospital room.
He didn't even exactly know how he ended up in the hospital. He's there for about a week. Tests are run, but they can't really figure out what's wrong with him. The medical record lists a number of his symptoms, like memory loss, fatigue, weakness, these type of things. The medical records between Ruben and Olga were almost identical.
The doctors, they took my blood and they're saying, he's clean, he's clean. I don't understand. I just don't get it.
They give him fluids, they give him some food, they monitor him and find that he's okay to be discharged. But even at the discharge point, they don't know what happened to this person.
I remember Ruben called me and told me this story. He really got sick. He almost got in coma. I got sick. Somebody poisoned me. He got poisoned too. Maybe this is the same person.
Ruben learned he was taken to the hospital by his sister. She said a woman brought him to the dry cleaning store he owned and claimed he'd passed out on a date.
And when she brought me back to my store, she was saying that, oh, he got drunk, he's this and that. She gave me my phone, but no money, of course. She took my watch. It's $800-something watch. When I got my phone back, she erased everything. She erased all the texts we did. All my phone was clear.
For good measure, when she dropped him off, Anna allegedly swiped $500 from the cash register.
The store's surveillance cameras caught the whole thing on tape.
His business had footage of Anna in his office, going through personal things, going through drawers and things like that. Ruben had no memory of this whatsoever.
I saw me on the camera, but I don't remember nothing. I think it's like, wow, it was weird.
Like Olga, Ruben spent the next 2 days feeling disoriented. When he recovered, he found out Anna had stolen more than he realized.
His American Express charge card has something like $2,600 worth of new charges that he has no idea where they came from.
After 2 weeks recovering from the shock of it all, Ruben decided to take action and report the crime to Brooklyn police.
He tells me that he went to the police precinct and they think she was his girlfriend and they broke up and that's why, you know.
So I left. I was like, you know what, they don't want to take information, it's okay. I tried to do my own investigation because I was mad that, you know, she got me. And then I thought about it and I was like, you know what, I'm alive. It's okay, and I let it go till Olga.
Olga and Ruben feel the similarities are too strong to deny. And they hope the NYPD agrees.
We went together to the police precinct and they realized that it's really serious.
2 victims talked about it, met in this small community and made this happen. Really interesting. Now you have a connection that you didn't have before.
Coming up, investigators discover evidence of a crime spree.
We start connecting different cases from different boroughs. We realized that we had numerous victims.
And they uncover a suspect on the run.
She was a wanted fugitive in Russia.
She got pictures in the car with her mother's body slumped over next to her in the passenger seat.
She is wanted for killing someone halfway across the world.
In September 2016, after Olga Svik and Ruben Borikov present their stories to the NYPD, both cases are revived.
We don't know any real pedigree information for this woman. Viktoriya, don't know where she works, don't know where she lives.
She used all these different names, and we have an MO, which is unusual. That poisoning thing, that's really odd, and also within a Russian community. So now we have possibly a Russian person committing these crimes.
Detectives also find it unusual that two nearly identical cases took place in different areas of the city.
It's rare that we get something in a different borough across the city. It's rare, but it's our job to be able to make those connections when we can. When something jumps out, like a poisoning, we put that out to other squads so they know, be on the lookout for this person.
Investigators quickly discover several more crimes with similar MOs.
We start looking at all like grand larcenies, connecting different cases from different boroughs, and we start making what we call a pattern. We realized that we had numerous victims from other areas. There was 2 cases. Both of them were located in Coney Island, both in the Ocean Parkway area. 2 Russian individuals who both go home with a dark-haired female.
In both cases, the victims are male, and they remember blacking out after eating or drinking.
One of the individuals met her on a dating site and arranged to go on a date with her to a coffee shop. He ordered coffee, she had wine. Within 15 or 20 minutes, started to feel very, very sick. On the ride back, he's actually saying to her in the car, "I'm not feeling well." She says to him, "Don't worry, let's pull over. I'll drive." They go back to his place. It's at or about that point where his memory completely cuts out. The following morning, he wakes up in his bed and cash and jewelry is missing from his house.
The victims' stories are eerily similar. Except one victim says the woman was named Mara, the other calls her Rachel.
Because they're communicating on these dating apps, there's really no information other than that in terms of tracking back this person. She may or may not have been using a fake name. No phone number, no address, no other kind of pedigree information.
Whatever the woman's real name is, the men say her profile advertised more than just dating.
One of the things that she offered was to come and perform for them sort of BDSM activities that they wanted done.
These men didn't want anybody to know about, they weren't open about their BDSM preferences or whatever.
Detectives know the clandestine nature of these trysts could be stopping more victims from reporting.
Maybe they won't come forward because of obvious reasons, embarrassment and things of that shame. So we don't know exactly how many victims there are.
Luckily, the man who identified the suspect as Mara is able to give police the address of the apartment she took him to.
He said he went to use the bathroom, and when he came out of the restroom, he realized that his car keys and wallet were missing, and so was Mara. His vehicle was also removed from the location.
When detectives contact the owner of the apartment, she claims a friend asked her to let a woman stay there for a few days.
She didn't know the individual, but did provide us at that time with a cell phone number. We did computer checks with that number.
The computer check provides detectives with a full name and possible lead: Viktoriya Nasyrova. Investigators learn she is a 41-year-old Russian woman in the United States on a visa.
There was a prior incident that occurred in Manhattan where she was arrested for allegedly stealing. The petty larceny is a minor crime. You get a desk appearance ticket. You get fingerprinted. If there's no warrants, local warrants for you, you will get released on a summons.
Detectives run her name through their database and find that it is also associated with an international record.
After running the name in our databases, they realized there is an Interpol warrant for her out of Russia. And they provided us with a photo, which was placed into a photo array.
The local victims who are willing to talk confirm Viktoriya Nasyrova is the woman investigators are looking for.
Now you got a connection here, and all of a sudden, the case gets connected back to Olga's case.
At this point, we found out that the person who committed this crime in New York City was a wanted fugitive, was wanted for murder in Russia, involving a woman named Alla Alexenko. The Russian government contacts Interpol, which is a global law enforcement agency. Interpol issues what is known as a red notice, which is essentially a worldwide wanted flyer of the highest category.
Now all of a sudden we have a whole different case. We have an international killer.
We activated what is called an investigation card. It's almost like a warrant. If the police department comes in contact with her, she would be detained and held for the investigation.
While detectives are on the hunt for Viktoriya Nasyrova, the stakes rise when they learn she's already wanted in her home country of Russia for the 2014 murder of Alla Alexenko.
Olga's case has been connected to Viktoriya, and now it's wrapped up in this international fugitive who is wanted for killing someone halfway across the world.
Not only is Viktoriya wanted for murder, but the victim's daughter, Nadia Ford, has been desperately searching for Viktoriya for 2 years. In 2017, unaware of Viktoriya's more recent attacks, Nadia seeks help from a private investigator.
Nadia Ford is originally from Krasnodar, Russia, born and raised there. I believe sometime in 2010 or 2011, she moved to the United States. She maintained a really good relationship with her mom, which is a woman named Alla Alexenko.
Nadia said that Viktoriya killed her mother. She's convinced Nadia was very instrumental in pushing the Russian authorities to investigate.
The Russian government has been unable to gain traction on the case, so Nadia hired New York private investigator Herman Weisberg.
Nadia was introduced to me by a common friend who was crying uncontrollably. I felt very bad for her. She explained that her mother was a victim of a homicide in Russia.
Nadia tells Weisberg the trouble began in 2013 when her mother Alla was befriended by a much younger woman living next door in Krasnodar, Russia.
The new neighbor that had moved in turned out to be Viktoriya Nasyrova. As soon as the friendship had begun, I think Nadia was a little suspect of it.
Alla was older, seemingly from a blue-collar family, humble, sort of like somebody's grandma, right? Viktoriya, on the other hand, was always decked out in fur coats and wore a lot of makeup and jewelry. She had much more of a luxurious outlook. Sometimes loneliness, right, is the type of thing that can motivate somebody to make an unusual friend. And I think that part of the reason why Viktoriya was successful in gaining Alla's trust is because Alla lived alone, and Viktoriya was right there. She was able to put up a front that Alla was very receptive to, and because she was a good-hearted lady, a giving type of personality, a trusting type of personality, she decided to make this friendship work. So sometime in 2013, Nadia visits and gets to meet Viktoriya. They spend time together, they go out, they form a little bit of a bond. Viktoriya later tells Nadia, I'm thinking about coming to New York. At some point in 2014, the following year, Alla says to her, you know, if you're going to go, could you give some things to Nadia? Personal items like clothing and things like that. So then time is passing, and Viktoriya is not going back to New York, and she still is holding on to those things. Alla is now chatting with Nadia. If she's not going to go to New York, she might as well give me the stuff back. Alla had actually hinted to Nadia that I'm going to confront Viktoriya about this because this is strange.
Nadia tells Weisberg that's the last conversation she ever had with her mother.
On October 4th or 5th of 2014, Alla goes radio silent.
Nadia Ford was very much in touch with her mom, daily basis, regular routine phone calls. A day didn't go by where they didn't communicate.
An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, a full day goes by, and Nadia still can't get in contact with her mom. It was pretty strange to her.
Nadia actually calls Viktoriya as well. She has her number. Viktoriya says, I haven't seen her. She may have left with some friends. Maybe that's where she turned her phone off. Nadia doesn't bite.
Nadia decides to look into the phone history of her mom's cell phone because she was the one that set up the phone for her to begin with. So she logs online and is able to look at the call history on that phone. She recognizes the final phone number that have had any contact with her mom to be the phone number of Viktoriya Nasyrova. This raises alarm bells because Viktoriya didn't say anything to her about calling her or contacting her over the phone.
She made arrangements to get on a plane and head to Russia about as fast as anybody would have. And immediately she knows something's wrong as soon as she gets to her mom's apartment.
The place has been ransacked. There are a lot of things missing. Documents, fur coats, perfumes.
Nadia discovered something else was missing. The large amount of money her mother kept hidden in the apartment.
Just before her disappearance, Alla, with Nadia's help, had sold a piece of property in Russia and had gotten a nice sum for it, somewhere probably around $50,000. She realizes that cash is missing. That discovery confirms to her that something really is seriously going on.
Immediately, Nadia contacts Russian authorities to look into her mother's disappearance.
In Nadia's mind, her mom is a hostage. She's been kidnapped, she's been taken somewhere. Worst case scenario, she's dead. Nadia asks the police if they could essentially set up like a sting operation. They provide some undercover personnel, and they arrange to follow Nadia to the apartment where she's going to confront Viktoriya.
When Nadia Ford meets with private investigator Herman Weisberg in 2016, she details her investigations from the last year and a half. Nadia tells Herman that quickly following her mother's disappearance in October of 2014, she worked with Russian authorities to set up a sting operation to apprehend Viktoriya Nasyrova.
Nadia meets with Viktoriya outside of the apartment building. Seemingly, it's just the two of them. Police, however, are on site. Can't be seen, though. Nadia grabs her pretty aggressively, squeezes her, and says, "Where's my mom? I know there's something going on with my mom." Viktoriya panics, sort of breaks away from the hold, and starts screaming, "Your mom is fine, your mom is fine." At this point, the police are starting to come out of their hiding place. Viktoriya does a 180 and books it, runs into the building to get away from Nadia and the police. They apprehend her, and they bring her back to the precinct.
Russian police start speaking with her. And of course she knows, I don't know what you're talking about. She does this whole thing. So at that point, they do a lie detector test, all right? And she fails it miserably.
Unfortunately, with no concrete evidence tying Viktoriya to the robbery or Nadia's missing mother, they had to let her go.
When you don't have enough, you have to let them go. That happens even over here. So you don't have enough, but you still work the case.
While the case remains open for authorities, Nadia decides she would continue investigating on her own.
Nadia stays in Russia. She is like a dog with a bone, and she's not going to give up until she finds out what's going on with her mom.
Nadia reasoned that if Viktoriya did kill her mother, Alla, she must have moved her body.
She was able to go to traffic cameras and kind of plot the course of Viktoriya leaving her apartment, which is astounding police work for somebody that doesn't do this for a living.
Nadia reviewed footage from the day Alla disappeared and found blurry video of a car leaving her mother's home.
She got pictures of Viktoriya driving south in the car with her mother's body slumped over next to her in the passenger seat.
She takes that to the police, and they find out the plate. The car was registered to Viktoriya.
The authorities track the GPS signal from Viktoriya Nasyrova's cell phone at or about the time of Alla's disappearance. And what they find is that essentially her phone tracked a particular path that day going from one city to another within Russia. She sort of does like a loop where she goes to this area just outside Armavir, is there for a while, and then leaves.
In April of 2015, 7 months after Alla goes missing, investigators follow Viktoriya's trail of digital breadcrumbs and make a devastating discovery.
The Russian authorities, they ask themselves, why would she take this pit stop in sort of like this neck of the woods for this period of time on that particular day? So they're able to zone in on it. They get cadaver dogs, and after searching for an extensive period of time, they're able to find burnt remains of a human body.
They find the remains of a body. They were so far gone that they could only be identified through dental records. And that is how they realized that they had a murder on their hands and that it was the murder of Alla Alisenko.
Her body was in bad shape physically, but we don't know what happened to Alla.
The evidence gave Russian police everything they needed to charge Viktoriya with murder. But there was another problem.
That Viktoriya Nasyrova is nowhere to be found in the city that she was living or anywhere in Russia.
Viktoriya had a relationship, apparently, with somebody high up in the police department, and she was getting information, so she had escaped Russia.
At that point, as we say in the business, she's in the wind. She flies out of the country.
The red notice was issued in July of 2015. This is about 10 months after Alla's disappearance.
With the search for her mother having concluded in the worst possible outcome, Nadia returns to New York. However, Nadia says the mystery seems to have followed her home. Nadia tells Weisberg she has reason to believe Viktoriya escaped to the United States and is now hiding in New York.
Nadia heard from some of her acquaintances in Brooklyn that Viktoriya was in the area. She was also directed to find a Facebook account, which was a variation of Viktoriya's first and last name. It was kind of hyphenated, Vina, V-I-N-A, which a lot of people at that time were doing with Facebook accounts to, not use their full name.
Nadia, fortuitously, comes across a photo of the person she knows to be Viktoriya Nasyrova, and it's tagged at a location in Brooklyn. So now, Nadia is afraid because in her mind, perhaps Viktoriya is in New York because she wants to do something to Nadia. Nadia is in a difficult predicament. She can't go to the NYPD and say, there's this woman who's here in New York who I think did something to my mom in Russia. So Nadia hires Herman and asks him to look into this person.
The more she talked, the more I felt if the NYPD, if Interpol, if Russia, if nobody can catch this woman, I don't know why I'm sitting in this conference table, frankly, but I should help her by any means necessary.
Coming up, the search for Viktoriya heats up.
I have a tendency to look at what they're not showing me. I noticed that there was pretty unique stitching in the vehicle that she was in.
And evidence continues to mount.
I sent out my surveillance teams. I had them all split up.
He told us, look, take them all. I don't want any of her stuff here.
They came across Olga Zvik's Ukrainian passport.
In March 2016, the NYPD continues its investigation into Viktoriya Nasyrova, a Russian criminal they believe poisoned Olga Zvik and several men across the city. Meanwhile, private investigator Herman Weisberg begins one of his own.
I decided to just take it on, and I became kind of obsessed with it because of how bad I felt for Ms. Ford.
Weisberg starts to piece together as much as he can as a private investigator to find Viktoriya. He has obviously some ability to research databases, so he knows that there's a red notice for her. He then tries to look into her footprint, her online footprint.
There wasn't much there except for a Facebook account. But on Facebook, you know, it's very interesting to me that people are showing off. So when I look at anybody's Facebook page, I have a tendency to look at what they're not showing me. So I look past it and I look into the backgrounds, or I look at the other people in the shot. I noticed Viktoriya liked wearing those mirrored aviator sunglasses. And I love that because I like looking in the reflection for the little things that Viktoriya didn't mean to put out there.
He found one picture of her, a selfie, and there was a reflection in her aviators of a car. So he started to take a close look at the car.
I noticed that there was pretty unique stitching in the vehicle that she took this selfie in. Also, the clock on the dashboard was a very unique shape. I had some confidence that the car would still be connected to her.
Weisberg knows that in a city the size of New York, finding a single car can be like finding a needle in a haystack. He begins with zeroing in on the specific make and model.
I chose to walk around a parking lot that had, I don't know, thousands of vehicles.
Before the end of the first day, Herman's determination pays off. He spots a vehicle that matches the interior reflected in Viktoriya's sunglasses.
When I stumbled upon what turned out to be a Chrysler 300, I looked at it for about 20 minutes with my mouth open saying, holy, I actually just came across this car because I had given up 100 times in my mind.
The car doesn't belong to Viktoriya, but at least now Weisberg knows what he's looking for.
I still had to locate the vehicle in Brooklyn, but I was hoping that there were only a few in the areas that I had triangulated. On Viktoriya's Facebook page, she had done what's called liking different establishments, different businesses. There was a Mexican restaurant, there was a pizza place, maybe a nail or a hair salon, and they were all in close proximity to one another. I sent out my surveillance teams, had them all split up. Luckily for me, a Chrysler 300 with that interior package was relatively rare. Within 6 hours, my surveillance team found Viktoriya and her then boyfriend going out shopping and using that vehicle. We watched Viktoriya Nasyrova and her boyfriend going to pick up a flat-screen TV that they both had to carry back to their apartment building. And it was quite obvious, their use of keys to get entry, that's where they both lived. It definitely gave me a lot of confidence that we were on the right people at the right place. It flashed through my brain like, this is the craziest thing ever. I don't know how me and my team just did this, but there it is. Boom, done. I mean, I got her.
Now, private investigator Herman Weisberg and his team need the NYPD to finish the job and apprehend Viktoriya. In the midst of their own investigation, detectives receive Weisberg's fortuitous tip.
I got a phone call from a private investigator. He stated to me that he was hired by a family in Russia to attempt to locate Viktoriya. And he believed that he knew the location of her.
Detectives let Weisberg know they've been searching for Viktoriya for 7 months in response to a series of robberies and the attempted murder of Olga Svick.
I wasn't even aware at that time of what had transpired with Olga. I mean, I had my hunches about her from the beginning, that she's been up to no good for a long time here. I guess I was right about her. She don't care about anything but herself.
On March 16, 2016, the NYPD and private investigator Herman Weisberg combine forces to zero in on Viktoriya Nasyrova and make an arrest.
Within 48 hours, I was meeting them in front of that location in Brooklyn where she had resided.
She was living with someone named Vladimir, whose boyfriend at the time.
They went up to her boyfriend's apartment, asked if Viktoriya was there, which she replied yes. They asked Viktoriya to step out, and they handcuffed her and brought her to the 60th precinct.
After a 7-month-long manhunt, Viktoriya is finally in custody.
I asked her if she knew why she was apprehended, and she denied everything of she had no idea what was going on.
I saw Viktoriya get put in handcuffs and walked out the front door. I already had Nadja's phone number ready to call her. I said, we got her. Her reaction was like music when you hear something like that, when, you could hear the joy in her voice.
Now, the challenge for investigators is to connect her to the crimes she's suspected of committing.
So the very first thing that the New York Police Department had to do is figure out, was the person responsible for some or all of their open investigations? So they arranged with each detective who's handling each of the open investigations to conduct a lineup.
We brought all the victims to the precinct. They were able to view each lineup separately, and they don't get to speak with each other.
Police ask me if I see Viktoriya Nasyrova in that room, and I say, yeah, I see her.
Then they call me to Brooklyn to identify her. I went there and I saw her.
Viktoriya was identified in all these separate cases that we had at that time. And then she was charged for grand larceny for 3 individuals.
I was in shock, and in the same time I feel relieved.
After notifying Interpol of Viktoriya's arrest, detectives begin building a case strong enough to convict her.
After the arrest of Viktoriya, we went back to Viktoriya's boyfriend's house and we asked for consent to search his apartment. He was very shocked and almost depressed. He said they were having a little trouble and that she had moved out and was just recently moved back into the apartment in March.
Viktoriya's boyfriend Vladimir says the reason for their breakup was his dog, Joey.
Joey had died of very mysterious circumstances just weeks prior. Viktoriya, during the course of her relationship with Vladimir, made it known that she didn't really like the dog, in part because Vladimir was so close with this dog. Everywhere that Vladimir went, the dog went.
One morning, he woke up and the dog was no longer with him.
There was talk about her poisoning her boyfriend's dog. It's not a far stretch for me to think of what happened.
When investigators tell Vladimir about the people Viktoriya allegedly poisoned, he agrees to help.
Vladimir gave the police the permission for them to search some personal bags that she had in his home.
She had just moved back into his apartment. It was so recent that her bags were still packed. He told us, look, take them all. I don't want any of her stuff here.
Viktoriya's luggage provides them with a treasure trove of evidence.
As we're going bag by bag, we found Olga's jewelry that Olga described that was removed from her during her crime.
They also came across Olga's Vic's employment authorization card and her Ukrainian passport.
Tucked inside Olga's passport, officers find a recent photo of Viktoriya, and they're struck by how similar the two women look.
They're not 100% twins, but they can be mistaken for each other. I believe she was trying to change her identity to be Olga, to hide who she actually was, maybe because of the Interpol warrant.
Prisons in Russia are pretty notorious for being grim and horrific places to serve out your time. And she did not want to face the murder charge for Alla Alisenko's death.
But detectives know that to get away with it, Viktoriya needed Olga out of the picture permanently.
You can't steal somebody's passport because they're going to go and report the passport stolen, and Viktoriya's smart enough to know that. It's my belief that Viktoriya used the poisoned cheesecake to make it look like it was a suicide. She staged the scene with other pills laying around. She staged the scene by changing Olga's clothing into lingerie. So if the police or anybody had found her dead, they would have immediately thought suicide.
It's a perfect setup. You know, Olga was in her own home. No one was watching.
That's how brilliant Viktoriya Nasyrova was, in that she thought of almost every single detail to make this the perfect crime. What she didn't think about was the likelihood that Olga would survive.
Coming up, an international killer becomes a New York tabloid star.
You don't get a case like this every day.
She's a pathological liar, you know.
And the story she tells is stranger than fiction.
She told me herself she would meet men on BDSM websites.
After her arrest, Viktoriya Nasyrova is held without bail in Rikers Island. She refuses to speak to investigators about her alleged crimes, but seems more than willing to tell her story to reporters.
The media coverage for this case was off the charts. People were obsessed, particularly in New York, because you had all of these added elements. It wasn't just a poisoning, it was a stolen identity. There was a dominatrix aspect. She was from another country. She was also beautiful. You don't get a case like this every day.
Over the next few months, Viktoriya gives the media all the headlines they could ask for.
I met her several times at Rikers. Viktoriya is very charismatic, very talkative. No, she tells me she didn't do anything. She said she's been framed, she's innocent.
Part of the allure comes from the tale Viktoriya spins about her past.
She comes from southern Russia. She came of age in the 90s. And the collapse of the Soviet Union out in the south, it was hellish life. People had nothing, people didn't have food. You go to the store and there's nothing there, You just survive.
Viktoriya's stories include her being forced to join a Russian crime syndicate in her 30s.
She told me that she was doing off-the-books kind of cosmetology work. She couldn't get a mortgage, so she got some fake documents. At that point, the Russian government came and tried to blackmail her into working for them. She said what she would do is she would go and get incriminating information against somebody, and then she would help people, the Russian police, blackmail people for money. She said that she kept very meticulous records of all her assignments for this organization. It's all also shrouded in this sort of conspiracy and mystery.
Viktoriya claims she tried to get out several times, but she knew too much for Russian police to let her go. So they framed her for murder instead.
She said at that point they killed this Alla, the mother of Nadia, her neighbor, and they set it up to make it look like she did it, and they started an investigation against her. And she keeps telling me different versions of the same story where she ended up in the U.S. to try to get away from these people.
While hiding out in the U.S., Viktoriya admits she supported herself by working as a dominatrix.
She told me herself she would meet men on BDSM websites.
And she would say in interviews that she sort of fulfilled their needs and provided a service. She almost acted like she was doing kind of a positive thing for these men.
However, Viktoriya denies poisoning or robbing any of her clients. She also denies trying to kill Olga to steal her identity.
She told me that Olga had sold her Ukrainian passport because Viktoriya was too scared to use her Russian passport.
She talked openly about the day that she went over to Olga's house and telling the media that Olga was already feeling sick and she was unwell prior to her getting to the apartment. The reason she gave for why she was targeted for this crime as the potential perpetrator was that she was being framed by the Russians.
She's a pathological liar, She always makes some new fairy tale.
For prosecutors, Viktoriya's press interviews are a preview of defense strategies she might try in court. And they're concerned that without evidence she poisoned Olga, those strategies might work.
To convict somebody, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And there was this open question of, what was it that poisoned Olga? The preliminary tests show that there's no controlled substance in the container.
The same can be said for the NYPD's other cases against Viktoriya.
It was a very strange situation that each victim explains the same symptoms. Ruben spent numerous days in the hospital being observed, and they didn't find anything with him. But there was something there that was making each of these individuals pretty much tranquilized for a day or two. The NYPD lab catalog was not big enough to determine the type of drug that was in that cheesecake. So the police department and the district attorney's office spoke, and they said, well, maybe we have to broaden our horizons. A federal agent can test it on their systems, which isn't just the United States narcotics. So I was very excited to hear they were able to break it down a little bit more. And the federal agent was actually able to identify what was used, and it could have killed every single one of these victims.
One of the greatest challenges to the investigation into Viktoriya Nasyrova has been proving attempted murder without a murder weapon. But the Department of Homeland Security has access to technology the NYPD does not.
When the cheesecake container is tested by the Department of Homeland Security, it comes up positive for phenazepam, which is something that the New York Police Department doesn't have in their bracket of controlled substance, because it's not a controlled substance in the United States. This is why that first test came up negative.
Phenazepam is a benzodiazepam, kind of a depressant that was developed in the Soviet Union, and they call it Russian roofie.
It has depressive effects on the human body. It's used primarily to treat seizures, epilepsies, and things like that. If taken in large doses, can cause the heart to slow down to a point where it arrests and it stops.
When investigators see the list of side effects for the drug, which include amnesia, they understand why the victims had a hard time remembering anything.
When she was given these drugs, it would give her enough time to go through their apartments, to find or locate any jewelry or certificates without them waking up or catching her.
A detail of the crime scene in Olga's apartment suggests Viktoriya meant to do more than just knock her out.
Why would the first witnesses say that in late August, when it's hot out, Olga's heater was turned on to the max and the windows were closed and it was incredibly hot in the room?
Extreme heat intensifies the effects. So it stands to reason that the heat was ratcheted up as high as it could go in the heat of summer of the end of August so that it could make the effects more intense and work faster.
Once we had that phenazepam, there's more light shining on Viktoriya that she tried to kill Olga.
Detectives finally have a murder weapon. And they can also prove Viktoriya was the one who used it.
Viktoriya's mouth was swabbed, and there was a comparison done between the results of that mouth swab and the results of the DNA on the cheesecake.
So with her DNA there, it locks her into her being the one who touched and was able to handle that container.
Once it was known that phenazepam was in the container, then that became the bow on top of the case to allow the police department and the Queens DA's office not only to charge Viktoriya with larceny, but also charge Viktoriya with attempted murder, because this was an attempt to kill somebody and steal their identity.
During her arraignment, Viktoriya pleads not guilty to all of the charges against her. Prosecutors start preparing for trial, but despite the new evidence, they hit a roadblock.
We came into a lot of trouble going into court with trying to get the male individuals to come and testify. We have to now put you on a stand and you have to tell your story in public to people that you don't know. Some of them decided that they no longer wanted to go forward and prosecute.
The Brooklyn cases were falling apart, and the Brooklyn DA's office wanted to get something for them.
She was originally charged for grand larcenies. They were downgraded, and she pled guilty to petty larceny misdemeanors.
For drugging and robbing 3 men in Brooklyn, Viktoriya is sentenced to just 90 days in jail. Time she's already served while awaiting trial.
We have no legal authority to charge the Russia investigation. So now the only case that remained was Olga's attempted murder case in Queens.
But due to the COVID pandemic, the trial for attempted murder is delayed several years. In the meantime, Viktoriya notches a major legal victory against the city of New York.
She didn't have an easy time when she was at Rikers waiting to go to trial. She was assaulted inside of the prison and ended up suffering a bunch of different injuries to her body.
A local news station obtains graphic footage of the attack on Viktoriya and airs it on the evening news.
She ended up suing, claiming that the guards were negligent in stopping the attack and they were negligent in protecting her.
So she ended up suing Rikers for $5 million. She got $325,000.
The money that Viktoriya was awarded from what happened to her in jail, that turns everybody's stomach that I've spoken to, including mine.
After Viktoriya spends 6 years behind bars, in 2023, a trial date is finally set for the attempted murder of Olga Svik.
We start preparing and more closer to the date for the trial, I got more scared. And I realized that I have to see that person who wants to kill me. I don't want her to be outside around people. I was very scared.
On January 30th, 2023, opening arguments are made in one of the most highly anticipated trials in the country.
This seems pretty wild. You know, a sexy, like, vixen trying to kill somebody by feeding them poison cheesecake. Meeting, like, guys online, robbing them, BDSM. It's got everything, right?
But when Viktoriya enters the court, she no longer resembles the seductress whose photos have tantalized tabloid readers for years.
I just look at the woman. She changed, you know. She got more weight and she was like a regular woman.
Several of Viktoriya's alleged victims are called to testify, including Olga.
Then Dino started asking me a question. I was worrying about everything, you know, or about the process, because I never do that before.
Olga came off as a very convincing witness. She came off as credible. She came off as sincere, as did Ruben as well.
I did testify. I said everything true. Like, she could have killed me. She hurt a lot of people. She did a bad thing. And if nobody stops her, she would have keep doing it.
The trial lasted for about a week and a half. It was really emotional. And to see these survivors, I think, really tugged at the heartstrings of the jury.
From the very beginning, we looked at this as Viktoriya Nasyrova attempted to kill Olga Svik, but you can't stop the story there. Your jury is going to say, well, why? Why would she need a new identity? We said to the jury, there's something very serious going on. There was a red notice that was put out for this woman, and she fled Russia. We'd simply alert them to the fact that there was something very serious going on in Russia. We never said anything about a murder, whether she did something wrong or didn't do something wrong. She knows that she's wanted, and she knows, quite frankly, that she's wanted by a government that doesn't afford her the same constitutional protections that we have here. So now, her time is running out in the United States. The valid visa that she had entered the country with was due to expire on September 4th of 2016. She needed to do all of this so that she could never go back to Russia.
The defense insists the state's evidence against Viktoriya is almost entirely circumstantial.
We had the results of the DNA on the cheesecake. But the defense is looking at the fact that there are no third-party witnesses. The only person that's saying that Viktoriya Nasyrova was there is Olga's Vic. So there are no eyewitnesses. There's no surveillance tape. But I think that ultimately the jury saw past those arguments.
The jury takes only an hour and a half to reach a verdict.
Viktoriya Nasyrova was convicted of attempted murder in the second degree, attempted assault in the first degree, assault in the second degree, unlawful imprisonment, and petty larceny.
She was sentenced to 21 years behind bars with credit for time served. So she can be out in roughly 15 years. When she was sentenced, Viktoriya had a full-out outburst in the middle of court and cursed out the judge. What a gem. This woman is a menace to society.
It's as bizarre a case as you'll ever see. It'll be unlikely that we'll ever see another murder or attempted murder with a piece of cheesecake.
Viktoriya is paying for her crimes in the United States, but justice for another crime still awaits overseas.
I sat next to Nadia when the sentence was given by Judge Holder about the 21 years. I think she saw that as a win, but there'll never be a win until Viktoriya pays the price for taking her mom's life.
Presumably, after Viktoriya's sentence, the federal government will work out some arrangement with Russian authorities to extradite her directly to Russia. And if that case is still pending, she should be prosecuted for the murder of Alexenko.
From what I've come to know about Nadia Ford's mom, she was a very giving person. She seemed like she was one of those people that people describe as everybody's mom. And I guess she had a little bit more than Viktoriya had, and Viktoriya turned out wanting that, whatever she had, for herself. This is a person that is dangerous. This is a person that doesn't belong outside of jail.
I could not sleep for months. I would spend hours crying myself, thinking about what happened to me. In the beginning, I just hate her. But after time, I start questioning myself. And I start more studying about psychology, and I forgive her, like really forgive her. I not say that she's a good person. She is dangerous. She in the right place. I forgive her just for myself, because I wanna live my life and enjoy without thinking of her.
The complex mechanisms of international crime and local law enforcement often intersect in ways that challenge the imagination, revealing deep truths about human nature, societal vulnerabilities, and the relentless pursuit of justice. By examining the intricate details of a major modern criminal investigation that captured the attention of both the public and global security agencies, we can uncover the underlying psychological motives, the systemic loopholes that permit such occurrences, and the critical analytical tools utilized by investigators to decipher seemingly perfect crimes. This analysis explores a remarkable case involving identity theft, chemical manipulation, and a flight from international justice, offering profound educational lessons on personal safety, community vigilance, and the modernization of law enforcement techniques. At the very heart of this case lies a fundamental exploration of criminal motivation, primarily driven by a toxic combination of material greed, narcissistic vanity, and an urgent, desperate need to evade global justice. For a perpetrator operating across multiple borders, the motive was not merely financial gain, though the theft of jewelry, cash, and high-value personal property served as a convenient means of sustenance. Instead, the primary driving force was survival through disguise, specifically the absolute erasure of her own identity and the systematic acquisition of a clean, unsuspected persona. When an individual is wanted internationally under a red notice issued by the International Criminal Police Organization for a capital offense such as murder, their existing identity becomes a cage. Every border crossing, every official transaction, and every interaction with local authorities presents an existential threat. To escape this cage, the criminal in this case realized that she had to stop being herself. The motive for targeting a lookalike victim was therefore born out of a calculated, cold-blooded decision to find a biological double, eliminate her under the guise of self-harm, and assume her legal existence, including her passport, work authorization, and clean background. This is a level of motivation that goes far beyond typical larceny, entering the realm of predatory identity theft, where another human being is viewed simply as a biological resource to be harvested and discarded. The frequency with which such deceptive crimes occur, particularly within dense urban environments like New York City, is closely linked to several modern societal dynamics. One of the most significant vulnerabilities exploited by such predators is the natural, trusting bond that exists within close-knit immigrant communities. When individuals relocate to a new country, they often seek comfort, familiarity, and a sense of belonging among fellow speakers of their native language. This shared cultural background creates an immediate, unearned sense of kinship and mutual trust. In this case, the large Russian-speaking communities of Brooklyn and Queens became the ideal hunting ground. Within these enclaves, regular, hard-working individuals seeking to build their lives are naturally more inclined to trust a compatriot, let down their guard, and invite them into their homes or businesses. The criminals systematically weaponized this cultural affinity, using her shared language and familiarity with cultural nuances to disarm her victims, whether through a professional beauty service relationship or through casual interactions on digital dating applications. Another major factor contributing to the frequency of these cases is the increasing reliance on digital platforms to facilitate interpersonal connections and professional services. Digital dating applications and online service platforms offer an unparalleled level of anonymity and convenience. They allow a predatory individual to construct a completely fabricated online persona, complete with false names, curated photographs, and misleading professional credentials. Because the initial contact occurs in a virtual space, victims have very little ability to verify the true identity, history, or motives of the person they are meeting. This digital buffer zone enables a perpetrator to operate under multiple aliases simultaneously, presenting herself as a successful businesswoman to one victim, a romantic interest to another, or a specialized physical performer to a third. The ease with which these digital identities can be created, modified, and deleted makes it incredibly difficult for victims to seek recourse and for local police departments to establish a cohesive pattern of criminal activity across different jurisdictions. When analyzing the methodology of the perpetrator, we observe a striking contrast between high-level sophistication and fatal, ego-driven loopholes. The sophistication of the crimes is evident in the meticulous planning of the physical environments. To ensure that the poisoning of her lookalike would be classified by first responders as a tragic, self-inflicted incident, the criminal staged the scene with theatrical precision. She scattered pharmaceutical pills around the unconscious victim to provide an obvious, albeit false, explanation for her state. She went so far as to change the victim into elegant lingerie, creating a dramatic, tragic scene reminiscent of a fictional melodrama. Most chillingly, she adjusted the apartment's heating unit to its maximum capacity during the sweltering heat of late August, creating an environment exceeding 80 degrees. This was not a random action. Rather, it was a highly sophisticated attempt to accelerate the biological processes of the victim's body and intensify the physiological impact of the sedative, thereby reducing the window of time in which medical intervention could save her life. This level of environmental manipulation demonstrates a cold, analytical mind capable of anticipating how first responders and medical personnel would interpret a physical scene. However, despite this chilling level of preparation, the criminal's efforts were ultimately undone by her own extreme narcissistic vanity and psychological loopholes. This pattern is common among predatory personalities who believe they are intellectually superior to both their victims and the authorities. Despite being a wanted international fugitive running from a murder charge, she could not resist the allure of self-exhibition on social media. She maintained an active online presence, posting self-aggrandizing photographs, checking in at trendy local establishments, and showing off her luxurious lifestyle. Her deep-seated need for public validation and admiration directly led to her downfall. By posting a high-resolution selfie while wearing reflective aviator sunglasses, she unwittingly handed investigators the very key to her location. She believed she was displaying her beauty and sophistication, but in reality, she was providing a detailed, high-contrast reflection of the interior of her vehicle, complete with unique upholstery stitching and a distinctively shaped dashboard clock. This psychological blind spot, where the desire to be seen and admired overrides the basic instinct of self-preservation, is a classic vulnerability that frequently leads to the capture of highly evasive individuals. The path to solving this complex, multi-layered case relied on a series of critical clues, technological interventions, and persistent investigative work that eventually united local, national, and international agencies. Initially, local medical staff and New York City Police Department detectives faced a major obstacle when standard clinical toxicology screens returned completely negative results. This occurred because local laboratory testing arrays are typically configured to detect common domestic-controlled substances and household toxins. The substance used in this case, however, was a highly specialized Soviet-era depressant known as phenazepam, which was not classified as a controlled substance within the United States, and therefore did not appear on standard local screening panels. This initial negative result almost allowed the crime to go undetected, as first responders were tempted to dismiss the incident as a non-criminal medical event. The breakthrough occurred when investigators recognized the need to broaden their analytical horizons and requested the assistance of federal law enforcement agencies, specifically the Department of Homeland Security. By utilizing advanced national-level testing systems capable of identifying international chemical compounds, federal scientists successfully identified the presence of phenazepam within the residue of the cheesecake container retrieved from the victim's trash can. This scientific revelation transformed the entire nature of the investigation. It provided the physical evidence of a dangerous, exotic sedative that matched the unusual symptoms of memory loss, extreme fatigue, and severe disorientation experienced by multiple victims across different boroughs. This chemical signature acted as a common thread, linking a series of seemingly unrelated robberies in Brooklyn to the attempted murder in Queens. Furthermore, the physical recovery of the victim's stolen property within the perpetrator's personal luggage provided the absolute connection required for a successful prosecution. When investigators searched the belongings left at her boyfriend's apartment, they discovered the victim's Ukrainian passport, her official work authorization card, and her personal jewelry. Most notably, tucked inside the stolen passport was a recent photograph of the perpetrator. This physical juxtaposition revealed the entire criminal conspiracy in a single, undeniable image. It proved that the perpetrator was actively using the stolen document and had targeted the victims specifically because of their strong physical resemblance, intending to assume her identity and permanently erase her own past. This irrefutable physical evidence, combined with the matching deoxyribonucleic acid profiles found on the cheesecake container, completely dismantled the perpetrator's complex web of denials and fabricated excuses. From an educational and community safety perspective, this harrowing case provides several profound life lessons that can help prevent similar tragedies in the future. The first and most critical lesson is the absolute necessity of guarding personal identity documents and sensitive informations with the utmost care. A passport, birth certificate, or work authorization card is not merely a piece of paper. In the modern world, it is the digital and legal representation of one's entire existence. Criminals who are desperate to escape their pasts view these documents as high-value targets. Individuals, especially those navigating the challenges of living in a new country, must treat these items with the same level of security as financial assets, ensuring they are stored in secure, private locations and never left accessible to casual acquaintances or home visitors. Secondly, this case highlights the vital importance of listening to personal intuition and maintaining healthy, rational boundaries, even within familiar social or cultural circles. The victim, in this case, recalled feeling a sense of hesitation when her client requested an emergency, off-hours service at her private residence on her day off. However, out of politeness, professional courtesy, and a shared cultural background, she chose to ignore her intuition and welcome the individual into her home. Intuition is often the subconscious mind, recognizing subtle, incongruous behavioral cues that the conscious mind has not yet fully processed. When an acquaintance, client, or romantic partner makes unusual, highly pressing demands that deviate from standard professional or social boundaries, it is entirely appropriate to politely decline or insist on meeting in a public, neutral setting. Politeness should never take precedence over personal safety. Additionally, the broader community must cultivate a heightened awareness of the risks associated with consuming unsealed food or beverages provided by casual acquaintances, clients, or individuals met through digital platforms. While sharing food is a universal gesture of hospitality and goodwill, it is also one of the most common vectors for the administration of surreptitious sedatives. In multiple instances linked to this perpetrator, victims accepted home-cooked meals, wine, or baked goods out of politeness or romantic interest, only to lose consciousness minutes later. A simple, non-confrontational rule of thumb is to avoid consuming any food or drink that has not been prepared in one's own presence or served in a regulated public establishment. This simple boundary can act as a powerful shield against predatory individuals who rely on chemical manipulation to disarm their targets. For law enforcement agencies seeking to accelerate the capture of highly mobile, sophisticated perpetrators, several valuable operational insights can be drawn from this successful investigation. First, the case highlights the immense value of active, multi-jurisdictional communication and centralized pattern matching. Initially, the crimes committed by the perpetrator were scattered across different precincts and boroughs of New York City, appearing as isolated incidents of minor larceny, dating related disputes, or mysterious medical emergencies. Because different detective squads were working in isolation, the larger, dangerous pattern was not immediately apparent. By establishing robust, inter-borough communication channels and utilizing automated databases to flag highly unusual crime characteristics, such as unexplained biological blackouts combined with the theft of personal documents, police departments can identify serial offenders much faster, preventing further attacks. Secondly, this case underscores the vital role of public-private partnerships and collaboration with professional private investigators. In this instance, a private investigator hired by the family of an international victim was able to devote undivided attention, specialized digital tracking resources, and localized surveillance teams to locate the fugitive's vehicle and residence. By establishing a cooperative, mutually respectful relationship with the private sector, the police department was able to receive a highly accurate, actionable tip that led directly to a safe and efficient arrest. Law enforcement agencies should actively encourage open channels of communication where verified private investigators can securely share intelligence, thereby extending the reach of traditional police forces. Finally, police departments must modernize their toxicological and forensic protocols to anticipate the use of non-traditional, international chemical compounds. As global travel and migration increase, criminals have access to pharmaceutical products and sedatives manufactured outside the domestic market. When a victim presents with severe, unexplained neurological symptoms, memory loss, and disorientation, but standard domestic screens return negative, investigators should not automatically assume a non-criminal or self-inflicted cause. Instead, they should establish pre-arranged protocols with federal laboratories and international forensic agencies to run expanded, comprehensive screenings capable of detecting global chemical agents. Speed is of the essence in these cases, as biological evidence degrades quickly, and identifying the specific compound early can provide the crucial lead needed to secure crime scenes and identify suspects before they flee. To fully appreciate the dramatic, step-by-step resolution of this extraordinary case, we must trace the narrative timeline from its quiet beginnings to its international climax. Beginning on a warm, humid day in the late summer of the year 2016. On August 29th of that year, in a quiet residential neighborhood within the borough of Queens, New York, an 86-year-old landlord grew increasingly concerned after not seeing his second-floor tenant for 2 consecutive days. The tenant was Olga Tezvik, a 35-year-old Ukrainian immigrant who had moved to the United States in the year 2014 to escape the outbreak of conflict in her homeland and build a peaceful, prosperous life as a professional eyelash technician. She was widely known as a warm, hardworking, and deeply responsible individual who maintained a close, family-like relationship with her elderly landlord, whom she affectionately referred to as her American uncle. Deciding to check on her well-being, the landlord unlocked the door to her apartment and was immediately met by an intense, overwhelming wave of heat. The room's heating unit had been dialed to its maximum capacity, raising the internal temperature of the apartment to over 80 degrees, despite the warm summer weather outside. As he stepped further into the stifling room, he discovered a deeply disturbing and confusing scene. Olga Tezvik was lying on her bed, completely non-responsive and pale white. She was dressed in elegant lingerie, and numerous pharmaceutical pills were scattered haphazardly across the bedsheets and the bedroom floor. To any casual observer, and indeed to the first responders, who arrived shortly after the landlord's frantic 911 call, the scene bore all the hallmarks of a deeply troubled woman who had chosen to end her own life in a highly dramatic, theatrical fashion. Paramedics rushed the comatose young woman to a local hospital where emergency room physicians worked frantically to stabilize her vital signs. Medical professionals later noted that she was exceptionally fortunate to have been discovered when she was. Another hour of exposure to the intense heat in her non-responsive state would have almost certainly resulted in permanent organ failure or death. As Olga Tezvik slowly regained consciousness over the following days, she displayed severe neurological symptoms, including extreme physical weakness, profound fatigue, memory loss, and deep disorientation. To identify the specific substances responsible for her condition, hospital staff conducted standard urine and blood toxicological screenings. However, the results of these medical tests were entirely unexpected. The toxicology screen returned completely negative, showing no elevated levels of any common domestic-controlled substances, narcotics, or known pharmaceutical toxins. This diagnostic dead end created an atmosphere of skepticism among some hospital staff and initial responding officers, who began to wonder if the victim had experienced a non-criminal psychiatric episode or a self-administered overdose of a substance that had already cleared her system. Yet, as the fog of the sedatives slowly lifted, Olga Tezvik remained absolute and unwavering in her assertions to medical staff and family members. She had absolutely no history of depression, had never attempted self-harm, and was certain that she had been poisoned. Because of her weakened physical state, she was discharged from the hospital to continue her recovery at home under the care of her sister, Irina, who had immediately boarded a flight from Ukraine upon hearing the terrifying news. When Irina arrived at the Queen's apartment on August 30th, her protective instincts and practical nature immediately led her to inspect the premises. She went directly to the secure locations where her sister kept her most valuable possessions, including her Ukrainian passport, her United States work authorization documents, her savings, and her personal jewelry. Every single one of these items was gone. The only money left in the apartment was a single $17 bill, left inside an otherwise empty wallet. Even Olga's expensive personal perfumes had been removed from her vanity. Recognizing that this was not a tragic personal crisis, but a cold, calculated robbery, Irina immediately visited the local police precinct to file an official report for grand larceny. The following day, police officers visited the apartment to interview Olga Tezvik, whose memory was gradually returning in fragmented, vivid bursts. She explained to the officers that the very last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was a visit from one of her regular clients, a woman she knew as Viktoriya. Viktoriya was a frequent customer who would travel all the way from Brooklyn to Queens every 2 to 3 weeks for eyelash services. She was a highly charismatic, outgoing woman who presented herself as a highly successful businesswoman who had previously owned a luxury beauty salon in Moscow. On Sunday, August 28th, which was Olga's scheduled day off, Viktoriya had contacted her in a state of hat urgency, claiming that she was departing for a trip to Mexico the following day and desperately needed her eyelashes touched up. Against her own personal intuition, which told her not to accept clients at her private residence. On her day off, Olga agreed to perform the service as a personal favor. When Viktoriya arrived, she was carrying a beautifully packaged box of cheesecake from a famous high-end bakery in Brooklyn, presenting it as a warm gesture of appreciation for the last-minute appointment. As they entered the apartment, Viktoriya's behavior became notably intense. She opened the pastry box and began eating a piece of the cheesecake with extreme speed, insisting that it was the most delicious cake she had ever tasted. She quickly consumed a portion and left a single piece in the box, eagerly urging Olga to eat it. Although Olga was not hungry, she took a few bites out of sheer politeness to her guest. Within a matter of minutes, a profound, terrifying sensation of sickness overcame her. Her head began to spin, her vision blurred, and she felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. She struggled to reach her bed, collapsing as she tried to inform Viktoriya that something was terribly wrong. The last visual memory Olga preserved, before descending into a deep multi-day coma, was the image of Viktoriya calmly entering her bedroom, holding a roll of paper towels, offering to clean up the mess with a chilling lack of concern. Upon hearing this detailed account, detectives realized that the cheesecake container itself represented a vital piece of physical evidence. They searched the apartment's trash receptacle and successfully recovered the cardboard box containing the remaining crumbs of the pastry. The container was immediately bagged, tagged, and sent to the New York City Police Department Forensic Laboratory for comprehensive analysis. However, the initial laboratory tests returned another frustrating negative result. The department's standard testing catalog did not detect any known controlled substances within the food residue. Furthermore, because Viktoriya and Olga had always communicated via mobile phone and met at a commercial salon, Olga possessed no home address, legitimate last name, or verifiable background information for her client. The phone number Viktoriya had used was no longer active, and she seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving investigators with an open, unresolved larceny case and very little actionable intelligence. A week after her discharge, as Olga Tezvik struggled to rebuild her strength and return to her daily routine, she received a highly unsettling text message from an encrypted number. It was Viktoriya, asking where she was and why she had been unreachable. When Olga took the courage to answer the subsequent phone call, she directly accused Viktoriya of poisoning her and stealing her life savings, her passport, and her jewelry. Viktoriya's response was chillingly calm and dismissive, telling her to go ahead and report it to the police, knowing full well that she had left no obvious trace of her identity. This arrogant confrontation left Olga living in a state of constant, pervasive fear, requiring her close friends to escort her to and from her home and watch over her as she entered her doorway. By mid-September, Olga Tesvik felt physically strong enough to return to her work at the beauty salon. One afternoon, a regular customer noticed her lingering fatigue and inquired about her health. Olga, reluctant to share the terrifying details of her ordeal, simply mentioned that she had been extremely ill due to an apparent poisoning. The customer's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. She informed Olga that she knew a gentleman named Ruben Borakov, who, earlier that summer, in June of the year 2016, had experienced an almost identical medical emergency after going on a date with a Russian woman he had met online. The customer immediately provided Olga with Ruben's contact information, setting off a chain of events that would completely revitalize the stalled police investigation. When Olga Tesvik contacted Ruben Borakov, the similarities between their experiences were nothing short of astounding. Ruben, a hard-working business owner who had immigrated to the United States from Russia in the year 1980, explained that he was single and active on a Russian-language dating application in June of the year 2016. He had matched with a highly intelligent, sophisticated woman who introduced herself as Anna. She claimed to have recently arrived from Russia, possessed an engaging, charming personality, and expressed a deep love for cooking. After a period of pleasant conversation, Anna invited Ruben to her apartment in the Sheepshead Bay neighborhood of Brooklyn for a home-cooked Sunday dinner. When Ruben arrived at the address carrying flowers and a bottle of wine, he was surprised to find the apartment completely devoid of furniture, with the carpets rolled up on the floor. Anna quickly brushed his concern aside, explaining that her roommate had just moved out and that she was preparing to relocate as well. She eagerly ushered him to a small folding table where a meal of prepared fish was waiting. Ruben took 2 bites of the fish and drank a single glass of wine. Instantly, his memory cut to absolute black. 2 days later, Ruben Borakov woke up in a local hospital bed, surrounded by medical staff who were deeply puzzled by his condition. His sister informed him that she had been working at the dry cleaning business Ruben owned when a woman drove up in Ruben's car, brought a completely non-responsive Ruben into the store, and claimed he had simply consumed too much alcohol on their date. She then handed over his mobile phone and quickly departed. When Ruben inspected his belongings, he discovered that his expensive $800 watch was gone. $500 had been stolen directly from his business cash register, and his mobile phone had been completely wiped of all text messages, contact information, and call histories. Furthermore, his credit card statements soon revealed over $2,600 in unauthorized charges. Just like Olga, Ruben had spent a week in the hospital undergoing numerous tests, all of which returned completely negative for any known toxins or drugs. When he attempted to report the incident to his local police precinct in Brooklyn, officers had unfortunately dismissed the case as a domestic dispute between a couple who had experienced a bad breakup, leaving Ruben frustrated and determined to simply move on with his life, grateful to be alive. Recognizing that they had been targeted by the exact same predator, Olga and Ruben joined forces and visited the New York City Police Department together. armed with the surveillance footage from Ruben S. business, showing the woman going through his private office drawers, and the matching clinical records from their respective hospital stays. They presented a compelling, undeniable case to the detectives. The police department immediately recognized that they were dealing with a highly dangerous, active predator operating a sophisticated crime spree across multiple boroughs. As detectives began connecting open grand larceny cases from different precincts, a terrifying pattern emerged. 2 additional cases in the Coney Island and Ocean Parkway areas of Brooklyn involved Russian male victims who had gone home with a dark-haired female they had met on dating websites. In both instances, the victims recalled blacking out almost immediately after consuming coffee or wine. One victim remembered feeling intensely ill in his car, prompting the woman to take the wheel and drive him back to his residence, where his memory completely failed. The following morning, both men awoke to find their homes ransacked, with significant amounts of cash, high-end jewelry, and personal documents missing. To avoid social embarrassment, some of these victims had been reluctant to cooperate fully with the police, particularly because the perpetrator had advertised her willingness to perform specialized alternative relationship services. A critical breakthrough occurred when one of the Brooklyn victims, who knew the perpetrator under the alias of Mara, managed to provide the police with the address of an apartment where she had briefly stayed. When detectives contacted the property owner, she explained that she had let a female acquaintance of a friend reside there for a few days. Although she did not know the woman's true identity, she provided investigators with a cellular phone number. A comprehensive digital database check on this phone number revealed a prior arrest record in Manhattan for a minor larceny offense. Because the offense had been classified as a nonviolent misdemeanor, the individual had been processed, fingerprinted, and released on a desk appearance ticket under the name Viktoriya Nasyrova, a 41-year-old Russian national residing in the United States on a tourist visa. When detectives ran this name through international law enforcement databases, the true international scale of the criminal S background was revealed. The International Criminal Police Organization had issued a high-priority red notice for Viktoriya Nasyrova, identifying her as a wanted fugitive who had fled the Russian Federation to escape prosecution for the brutal year 2014 murder of her 54-year-old neighbor, Alla Alexeyenko, in the city of Krasnodar. To understand the full depth of Nasyrova's criminal path, we must look back to October of the year 2014 in Krasnodar, Russia. Alla Alexeyenko was a humble, warm-hearted woman who lived alone and had recently sold a valuable piece of property, securing a significant cash sum of approximately $50,000. Viktoriya Nasyrova, who lived in the adjacent apartment, had systematically gained Alla's trust, presenting herself as a glamorous, wealthy friend. On October 5th of that year, Alla suddenly went completely silent, failing to answer the daily phone calls of her devoted daughter, Nadia Ford, who was living in the United States. Deeply alarmed, Nadia logged onto her mother's mobile phone account from the United States and discovered that the very last phone call made from the device was to Viktoriya Nasyrova. Nadia immediately booked the fastest available flight to Russia. Upon entering her mother's apartment, she found the home completely ransacked, with her mother's life savings, valuable fur coats, personal documents, and expensive perfumes missing. Nadia immediately contacted the local Russian authorities, who agreed to assist her in a sting operation. Nadia confronted Nasyrova outside her apartment building, while undercover officers waited nearby. When Nadia demanded to know her mother's whereabouts, Nasyrova panicked, screamed that Allah was flying away, and fled into the building. Although she was detained and subjected to a lie detector test, which she failed completely, the local authorities lacked direct physical evidence linking her to a homicide at that time and were legally forced to release her. Undeterred, Nadia Ford demonstrated extraordinary investigative resolve. She spent months personally reviewing municipal traffic camera footage from the day of her mother's disappearance. Her persistence paid off when she identified a vehicle registered to Viktoriya Nasyrova, driving south out of the city. In a chilling, blurry frame from the traffic camera, Nadia identified her mother's lifeless body slumped over in the front passenger seat, next to Nasyrova. Armed with this photographic evidence, Russian investigators tracked the digital coordinates of Nasyrova's mobile phone from that specific day, leading them to a remote, wooded area outside the city of Armavir. There, in April of the year 2015, cadaver dogs located deeply burned human remains that could only be identified through dental records. It was Alla Alexenko. Realizing that a murder charge was imminent, Nasyrova utilized her connections with a high-ranking local official to secure counterfeit travel documents and fled the country, eventually entering the United States on a tourist visa just before the International Red Notice was officially published in July of the year 2015. By the year 2017, Nadia Ford was back in New York, living in constant fear after learning from acquaintances within the Brooklyn Russian community that her mother's killer was hiding in the very same city. Desperate for help, Nadia hired Herman Weisberg, a highly experienced and tenacious private investigator based in Manhattan. Weisberg immediately became deeply invested in the case, determined to locate the international fugitive whom official agencies had failed to apprehend. Weisberg began his search by carefully analyzing Nasyrova's digital footprint. He located an active Facebook account operating under a hyphenated variation of her name. Recognizing that Nasyrova's narcissistic vanity was her primary weakness, he meticulously scrutinized every photograph she posted. He noticed her fondness for wearing mirrored, aviator-style sunglasses. Using advanced digital magnification and image enhancement tools, Weisberg focused on the reflection in the metallic lenses of a selfie she had posted inside a vehicle. The reflection revealed a distinctive upholstery stitching pattern on the passenger seat and a uniquely shaped clock integrated into the dashboard. Weisberg, drawing on his extensive knowledge of automotive interiors, identified the vehicle as a highly specific Chrysler 300 luxury sedan. Armed with this crucial detail, he spent days searching parking lots and residential streets in the specific Brooklyn neighborhoods Nasyrova had checked into on social media. His tireless efforts were rewarded when he discovered the exact matching Chrysler 300 parked near a residential building. Weisberg deployed surveillance teams to monitor the vehicle around the clock. Within 6 hours, his team observed Viktoriya Nasyrova and her boyfriend exiting the building to purchase a flat-screen television. After confirming her identity and precise apartment unit, Weisberg immediately contacted the New York City Police Department. On March 16th, the year 2017, the New York City Police Department joined forces with Weisberg's team. Detectives knocked on the door of the Brooklyn apartment, where they successfully arrested Viktoriya Nasyrova without incident. Following her arrest, detectives conducted rigorous, separate physical lineups with the surviving victims, including Olga Tesvik and Ruben Borakov. all of whom positively and instantly identified Nasyrova as the woman who had poisoned and robbed them. Searching the luggage Nasyrova had left at her boyfriend's home, investigators uncovered a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, including Olga's stolen jewelry, her employment authorization card, and her Ukrainian passport containing Nasyrova's photograph. This evidence clearly demonstrated that Nasyrova had intended to permanently assume Olga's identity to evade deportation and the Russian murder warrant. Knowing her tourist visa was set to expire in September of the year 2016. While awaiting trial at Rikers Island, Nasyrova actively courted media attention, giving numerous interviews to local journalists. She fabricated elaborate, highly theatrical stories, claiming she was an innocent cosmetologist who had been framed by a corrupt Russian crime syndicate and blackmailing government officials. She claimed Olga Tezvik had willingly sold her the Ukrainian passport and denied any involvement in the poisonings. However, the scientific evidence compiled by the prosecution was absolute. Following the Department of Homeland Security's identification of phenazepam on the cheesecake container, investigators realized that the extreme heat Nasyrova had set in Olga's apartment was designed to accelerate the drug's lethal effects, transforming the grand larceny charge into a clear case of attempted murder. Although some of the male victims in Brooklyn chose not to testify due to personal embarrassment, leading to a downgrade of those specific charges to minor offenses, the Queen's District Attorney's Office presented a highly powerful, scientifically backed case for the attempted murder of Olga Tezvik. In January of the year 2023, the trial commenced in New York State Supreme Court. Olga Tezvik and Ruben Borakov delivered deeply moving, highly credible testimonies describing their terrifying experiences and the lasting psychological trauma they had endured. The prosecution successfully demonstrated that Nasyrova's motive was a calculated attempt to execute a perfect staged suicide, allowing her to steal a lookalike's clean identity and escape justice forever. On February 9th of the year 2023, after a brief deliberation of only 1.5 hours, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts, including attempted murder in the second degree, attempted assault, unlawful imprisonment, and petit larceny. Viktoriya Nasyrova was subsequently sentenced to 21 years in a state prison, followed by mandatory deportation to the Russian Federation, to face trial for the murder of Alla Alexenko. Through the relentless dedication of victims, private investigators, and coordinated law enforcement forces, a highly dangerous international predator was permanently removed from society, demonstrating the ultimate victory of justice, community resilience, and human empathy. The sprawling metropolis of New York City has long served as a beacon of hope, opportunity, and safety for individuals seeking to rebuild their lives from every corner of the globe. Among the diverse tapestry of neighborhoods that define this great city, the Russian-speaking enclaves of Brooklyn and Queens stand out as vibrant communities built on the foundations of hard work, mutual support, and a shared cultural heritage. Within these close-knit neighborhoods, an unspoken bond of trust often unites residents who have traveled far to achieve the American dream. However, this natural inclination towards solidarity and kinship can sometimes be exploited by predatory individuals who recognize that the warmth of community trust can easily be turned into a tool for deception. In the year 2016, a series of deeply unsettling events began to unfold in these very neighborhoods, exposing a sophisticated pattern of manipulation, theft, and violence that would ultimately shock seasoned investigators of the New York Police Department and capture the attention of the entire nation. At the center of this perplexing mystery was a young Ukrainian immigrant named Olga Tesvik, who had arrived in the United States in the year 2014 after fleeing the instability of her homeland. Settling into a quiet, welcoming residential area in Queens, Olga had begun to construct a fulfilling new life for herself. She found lodging in a cozy single-family home owned by an elderly gentleman whom she affectionately referred to as her American uncle, establishing a stable and supportive environment. Turning her passion for cosmetology into a career, she began working as an eyelash technician, a profession that allowed her to interact closely with both native English speakers and members of the local Russian-speaking community. Olga was widely respected by her neighbors and clients alike for her dedication, her gentle demeanor, and her highly professional approach to her craft. By all accounts, she was successfully realizing her personal version of the American dream, oblivious to the fact that her trusting nature and physical appearance would soon make her the target of a calculated and nearly fatal plot. On the afternoon of August 29, in the year 2016, the quiet peace of Olga's neighborhood was shattered when a call was placed to the emergency 911 telephone line. The caller, Olga S. elderly landlord, was in a state of panic. He explained to the emergency operators that he had not seen his tenant for 2 days, and, upon entering her second-floor apartment to check on her welfare, had discovered her in a highly alarming, unresponsive state. When emergency medical technicians and local police officers arrived at the scene, they were immediately struck by several highly unusual and contradictory details. The apartment was stiflingly hot, with the thermostat turned up to an extreme temperature of more than 80 degrees, despite the fact that it was the end of a warm August summer. Olga was found lying in her bed, dressed only in lingerie, in a state of deep unconsciousness. Her complexion was pale, and her breathing was dangerously shallow. Scattered haphazardly across the bed and the surrounding floor were numerous prescription pills, creating a scene that seemed explicitly arranged to suggest a tragic personal decision to end her own life. To the initial responders, the visual evidence presented a familiar, albeit tragic, scenario of self-harm. However, to more observant investigators, several details did not align with the typical patterns of such incidents. The scatter pattern of the pills appeared unnaturally chaotic, as though they had been deliberately thrown about the room to ensure they would be immediately noticed. Furthermore, the decision to elevate the apartment's heating system to its maximum capacity seemed entirely inconsistent with the actions of an individual in crisis. Olga was rushed to New York Presbyterian Queens Hospital, where emergency medical staff worked tirelessly to stabilize her condition. Doctors would later note that she was incredibly close to death and likely would not have survived another hour without medical intervention. As Olga gradually regained consciousness, she exhibited profound physical weakness, extreme fatigue, severe disorientation, and significant memory loss, which severely hampered her ability to explain what had transpired. Hoping to identify the specific substances responsible for Olga's comatose state, the hospital's medical team conducted a comprehensive urine toxicology screen and blood tests. To the utter astonishment of the clinical staff and attending detectives, the results of these tests came back entirely negative, showing no traces of common controlled substances or illegal drugs in her system. This baffling clinical presentation raised more questions than answers, as Olga's physical symptoms clearly indicated severe chemical impairment. Yet the diagnostic tools of modern medicine revealed nothing. Lacking any objective chemical evidence, and facing a patient with severely fragmented memories, the hospital had no choice but to monitor her progress, administer intravenous fluids, and eventually discharge her once she was deemed medically stable. Upon her return home, Olga was far from fully recovered, struggling to speak clearly or walk without assistance. Her concerned friends immediately contacted her sister, Irina, who resided in Ukraine. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Irina boarded the first available flight to New York City to care for her sister. When Irina arrived at the Queen's apartment and began organizing Olga's belongings, her protective instincts immediately alerted her to a far more sinister reality. She discovered that several of Olga's most critical valuables were missing, including her Ukrainian passport, her United States work authorization card, a substantial sum of cash, valuable jewelry, and even her personal perfumes. Realizing that this was not a self-inflicted medical crisis, but a calculated burglary, Irina immediately contacted the local precinct of the New York Police Department to report a major larceny. When detectives visited the apartment to interview the sisters, they found Olga's memory slowly beginning to return. She adamantly rejected any suggestion of self-harm, asserting that she had never harbored such intentions. Instead, she recalled the events of Sunday, August 28, which was her scheduled day off from the salon. She remembered receiving an urgent request from one of her regular clients, a woman named Viktoriya, who claimed she had an impending trip to Mexico and desperately needed her eyelashes adjusted. Out of professional courtesy and kindness, Olga agreed to accommodate Viktoriya at her private residence. Olga recalled that when Viktoriya arrived at her apartment, she was carrying a beautifully packaged box containing 3 square pieces of cheesecake from a well-known bakery in Brooklyn. Viktoriya spoke enthusiastically about the quality of the dessert and insisted that Olga must taste it. In a display of bizarre behavior, Viktoriya immediately opened the box, grabbed 2 of the pieces, and consumed them rapidly, leaving only 1 piece for Olga. Feeling obliged to be polite, Olga consumed the remaining slice. Within 20 minutes of eating the cheesecake, Olga began to experience severe nausea and physical distress, prompting her to lie down. She vaguely remembered Viktoriya offering to assist her and clean up her bedside before her memory completely faded into darkness. The details of Olga's account immediately shifted the focus of the investigation. Detectives realized that the last person to see Olga before her near-fatal collapse was this mysterious client, Viktoriya. Searching the apartment, investigators located the empty cheesecake container in a trash receptacle. The container was carefully secured as physical evidence and sent to the New York Police Department laboratory for analysis. Initial testing of the crumbs and residue failed to detect any known controlled substances, mirroring the negative results of Olga's hospital toxicology screen. However, a forensic analysis of the container successfully recovered a profile of female deoxyribonucleic acid that did not belong to Olga, suggesting the presence of another individual. The primary challenge facing the detectives was the lack of identifying information for the suspect. Olga only Kanoive kept her client by the first name of Viktoriya and had no knowledge of her residential address or background, as their interactions had always been confined to the commercial salon. The telephone number Viktoriya had used to communicate was no longer active, and she seemed to have vanished completely. Olga's fears were further heightened. When a week after her release from the hospital, She received a series of unsettling messages and a brief phone call from Viktoriya, who acted as though she was unaware of Olga's illness, but mockingly challenged her to contact the authorities when accused of the theft and poisoning. This brazen defiance left Olga terrified, constantly looking over her shoulder and relying on friends to escort her safely to and from her home. The breakthrough that would connect Olga's case to a larger, far more dangerous pattern of criminal behavior occurred through a remarkable coincidence within the close-knit immigrant community. Upon returning to work on a limited basis in late September, a client noticed Olga's lingering weakness and inquired about her health. When Olga reluctantly shared that she had been poisoned and robbed, the client was astonished and revealed that she knew a gentleman who had experienced an almost identical ordeal during the summer. The client provided Olga with the contact information of Ruben Borakov, a respected member of the Russian-speaking community who owned a local dry cleaning business in Brooklyn. When Olga contacted Ruben, they compared their experiences and discovered a series of chilling commonalities. Ruben explained that in June of the year 2016, he had met a charming, highly intelligent woman named Anna on a popular Russian dating application. After exchanging messages, she invited him to a dinner date at her apartment in the Sheepshead Bay neighborhood of Brooklyn. Upon arriving Vekep, eye to hot wine and flowers, Ruben was surprised to find the apartment virtually empty of furniture, with the carpets rolled up. The woman explained that her roommate had recently relocated, and she invited him to sit at a small, temporary table where she had prepared a fish dinner. Ruben recalled taking only 2 bites of the fish and drinking a single glass of wine before losing consciousness entirely. He awoke 2 days later in a local hospital, exhibiting the exact same symptoms of extreme fatigue, disorientation, and memory loss that had afflicted Olga. Just as in Olga's case, the hospital diagnostic tests found no trace of illicit drugs in his system, leaving the medical staff unable to explain his condition. Upon his discharge, Ruben discovered that his expensive watch, valued at over $800, and several $100s from his person were missing. Furthermore, his sister informed him that a woman had dropped him off at his dry cleaning business while he was unconscious, claiming he had simply consumed too much alcohol. Upon reviewing his business security camera footage, Ruben was shocked to observe the woman casually searching through his office drawers and removing $500 from the cash register while he lay unresponsive in the vehicle outside. He also discovered that his American Express charge card had been used to make over $2,600 in unauthorized purchases. When Ruben attempted to report these crimes to the local police precinct, his complaints were initially dismissed as a domestic dispute arising from a broken relationship, leading him to abandon the pursuit of justice out of frustration. However, when he shared his story with Olga, he sent her a photograph of the woman he knew as Anna. Olga immediately recognized the individual in the photograph as her client, Viktoriya. Armed with this critical connection, Olga and Ruben presented their joint accounts to the New York Police Department, prompting investigators to realize they were dealing Vekep Tehat, a highly sophisticated serial predator operating across different boroughs of New York City. The department issued an internal alert to other investigative squads, which quickly revealed additional open cases sharing an identical modus operandi. In the Coney Island and Ocean Parkway sections of Brooklyn, 2 Russian-speaking male victims had reported blacking out after meeting a dark-haired woman on dating websites. In one instance, The victim met a woman who introduced herself as Mara for a date at a local establishment, where he rapidly became violently ill after consuming his beverage. The woman drove him back to his residence, where his memory ceased. He awoke the following morning to find his cash, jewelry, and personal vehicle missing. In another case, a victim met a woman using the name Rachel under similar circumstances, resulting in the theft of his personal belongings. Investigators noted that the suspect had targeted individuals within her own cultural community, often exploiting their interest in private, alternative lifestyle preferences, or discreet dating arrangements. She correctly calculated that many of her male victims would decline to pursue investigations or cooperate with law enforcement due to intense personal embarrassment, social stigma, and the desire to protect their privacy within their tight-knit communities. The critical breakthrough in identifying the suspect's true identity occurred when detectives contacted the owner of the Brooklyn apartment where the victim named Mara had been robbed. The owner explained that she had permitted a female acquaintance to reside in the apartment temporarily and provided detectives with a mobile phone number. A comprehensive database search of this number revealed that it was associated with Viktoriya Nasyrova, a 41-year-old Russian national who had entered the United States on a visa. Investigators discovered that Viktoriya had a prior arrest for a minor shoplifting offense in Manhattan, which had resulted in her fingerprints being entered into the national database. When detectives ran her name through international law enforcement databases, they made a startling discovery. Viktoriya Nasyrova was the subject of an active red notice issued by the International Criminal Police Organization, the highest category of worldwide wanted alerts. She was wanted by the Russian Federation for the brutal and calculated murder of a 54-year-old woman named Alla Alexenko, which had occurred in the city of Krasnodar in the year 2014. The tragic details of the Russian homicide case revealed a pattern of cold-blooded manipulation that closely mirrored Viktoriya's actions in New York. Alla Alexenko was a humble, trusting woman who lived alone next door to Viktoriya in Krasnodar. Viktoriya had systematically cultivated a close friendship with Alla, gaining her complete trust. In the year 2014, Alla had successfully sold a valuable piece of real estate, receiving approximately $50,000 in cash, which she kept secured within her apartment. Shortly thereafter, Alla went completely silent, failing to make her daily contact with her devoted daughter, Nadia Ford, who was living in the United States. Extremely concerned, Nadia contacted Viktoriya, who claimed she had no knowledge of Alla's whereabouts, and suggested she may have left town with friends. Unsatisfied with this explanation, Nadia reviewed her mother's mobile phone records and discovered that the final call received on the device was from Viktoriya. Nadia immediately traveled to Russia and found her mother's apartment ransacked, with her life savings, expensive fur coats, and personal documents completely missing. Nadia tirelessly lobbied the Russian authorities to investigate her mother's disappearance, eventually participating in a coordinated confrontation where undercover police officers detained Viktoriya. Although Viktoriya failed a polygraph examination, the lack of direct physical evidence connecting her to the crime forced authorities to release her. Undeterred, Nadia conducted her own brilliant investigative work. She reviewed municipal traffic surveillance cameras from the day of her mother's disappearance and identified Viktoriya's personal vehicle traveling south from Krasnodar. In an astounding and deeply disturbing discovery, The surveillance footage captured a clear image of Viktoriya driving the vehicle with the unresponsive body of Alla Alexenko slumped next to her in the passenger seat. Russian authorities subsequently tracked the global positioning system signal of Viktoriya's mobile phone, which revealed a specific route to a remote area near the city of Armavir. In April of the year 2015, utilizing search dogs, investigators located buried, badly burned human remains that were subsequently identified through dental records as belonging to Alla Alexenko. By the time the Russian Federation formally charged Viktoriya v. Kep Itehat murder and requested the International Criminal Police Organization Red Notice, Viktoriya had already utilized her personal connections with a high-ranking Russian law enforcement official to obtain forged travel documents and flee the country, eventually making her way to New York City. Upon learning that her mother's suspected killer had escaped to the United States and was active in the Russian-speaking communities of Brooklyn, Nadia Ford resolved to locate her. In the year 2016, Nadia retained the services of Herman Weisberg, a highly respected former New York Police Department detective who operated a private investigative firm. Weisberg began a meticulous digital search, focusing on Viktoriya's active online footprint. He discovered a Facebook account operating under a hyphenated pseudonym that featured numerous photographs of Viktoriya, showcasing a luxurious lifestyle in Brooklyn. Weisberg applied a highly analytical approach to these images, closely examining the background details and reflections that Viktoriya had inadvertently broadcasted. In one high-resolution selfie, Viktoriya was wearing mirrored aviator sunglasses. By magnifying the reflection in the lenses, Weisberg identified the unique dashboard design, a distinct clock shape, and highly specific leather stitching of the luxury sedan she was sitting in. He identified the vehicle as a Chrysler 300 with a rare interior styling package. Determined to locate this vehicle, Weisberg personally searched numerous expansive parking facilities in the Brooklyn neighborhoods Viktoriya was known to frequent. Against extraordinary odds, his perseverance was rewarded when he located the exact Chrysler 300, matching the interior reflected in the sunglasses. Weisberg then cross-referenced the businesses Viktoriya had publicly endorsed on her social media profile, identifying a cluster of establishments, including a Mexican restaurant and a salon, located in close proximity in Sheepshead Bay. He deployed surveillance teams to monitor the area, and within 6 hours they observed Viktoriya and her boyfriend exiting the Chrysler 300 and entering a nearby residential building. The team watched as she helped carry a large television into the building, confirming her place of residence. Weisberg immediately contacted the New York Police Department detectives who had been actively searching for Viktoriya for 7 months in connection with the poisonings. On March 20 in the year 2017, the New York Police Department, in coordination with Weisberg's team, executed a tactical approach at the Brooklyn apartment. Officers arrested Viktoriya Nasyrova without incident. Following her arrest, detectives conducted physical lineups with the surviving victims, including Olga Tizvik and Ruben Borakov, who positively identified Viktoriya as the perpetrator of their respective poisonings and robberies. Hoping to gather additional physical evidence, detectives obtained written consent from Viktoriya's boyfriend Vladimir to search the residential premises. Vladimir, who was deeply shocked by the revelation of his partner's true identity, was highly cooperative. He revealed that his beloved dog, Joey, had recently died under highly mysterious and unexplained circumstances. after Viktoriya had expressed an intense dislike for the animal, raising immediate suspicions of animal poisoning. Vladimir surrendered several pieces of luggage that Viktoriya had recently brought back to the apartment. Within these bags, detectives discovered a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, including Olga Tezvik's stolen jewelry, her United States work authorization card, and her Ukrainian passport. Most shockingly, tucked directly inside Olga's passport was a recent photograph of Viktoriya. Upon comparing the physical features of the two women, detectives realized they possessed an extraordinary physical resemblance. Both women shared similar facial structures, dark hair, skin tones, and overall build. This visual evidence revealed a terrifying and deeply calculated motive. Viktoriya, desperate to evade extradition to the Russian Federation to face the murder charge for Alla Alexeyenko, had planned to systematically steal Olga's identity. By poisoning Olga with a lethal dose of a sedative and staging the apartment to look like a tragic suicide, Viktoriya intended to ensure that Olga would be permanently silenced and unable to report her missing documents. Viktoriya could then seamlessly adopt Olga's clean legal identity and remain in the United States indefinitely under a false name. To secure a conviction for attempted murder, the prosecution faced a significant legal challenge, identifying the specific chemical agent used to poison the victims, given that all initial toxicology screens had returned completely negative. The Queen S District Attorney's Office and the New York Police Department collaborated with the Department of Homeland Security, utilizing advanced federal laboratory equipment that was capable of screening for international substances not included in standard United States narcotics testing panels. The advanced analysis of the cheesecake residue successfully identified the presence of phenazepam, a powerful benzodiazepine tranquilizer originally developed in the Soviet Union during the 1970s. Phenazepam, often referred to as a highly potent chemical agent, is not approved for medical use in the United States and is known to cause profound central nervous system depression, extreme muscle weakness, severe amnesia, and, in large doses, fatal respiratory arrest. This scientific breakthrough explained the negative results of the initial medical tests and confirmed the extreme sophistication of the perpetrator's methods. Investigators also realized that Viktoriya's decision to close the windows and turn the apartment's heating system to its maximum capacity was a deliberate tactic. Extreme environmental heat significantly accelerates and intensifies the physiological effects of central nervous system depressants, ensuring that Olga would lose consciousness rapidly and reducing her chances of survival. With the chemical agent identified and Viktoriya's deoxyribonucleic acid recovered from the cheesecake container, the prosecution possessed irrefutable physical evidence linking her directly to the attempted murder. The legal proceedings faced several complications. While the attempted murder case was being prepared in Queens, the larceny cases in Brooklyn began to encounter difficulties. Several of the male victims, overwhelmed by personal embarrassment and the prospect of testifying publicly about their private dating encounters, declined to participate further in the prosecution. As a result, the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office was forced to accept a plea agreement where Viktoriya pled guilty to minor misdemeanor charges of petty larceny, resulting in a nominal sentence of 90 days, which was satisfied by the time she had already served in custody. Furthermore, the onset of the global coronavirus pandemic in the year 2020 caused extensive delays in the court system, keeping Viktoriya detained at the Rikers Island jail complex for nearly 6 years before she could be brought to trial for the attempted murder of Olga Tezvik. During her lengthy detention, Viktoriya was involved in a physical altercation with other inmates, sustaining injuries that she claimed the correction officers failed to prevent. She subsequently initiated a civil lawsuit against the city of New York, resulting in a settlement of $325,000, a development that deeply frustrated the surviving victims and investigators. In January of the year 2023, the trial of Viktoriya Nasyrova commenced in the Queen's Supreme Court, drawing intense media interest due to the bizarre and theatrical nature of the crimes. Viktoriya, who had spent years giving charismatic interviews to reporters from jail in which she spun elaborate, highly improbable tales of being framed by a Russian government conspiracy, appeared in court looking significantly altered from her former glamorous persona. The prosecution presented a powerful, logically seamless case, calling several survivors to the witness stand. Olga Tezvik delivered deeply emotional and highly credible testimony, describing her harrowing near-death experience and the lingering psychological trauma she had endured. Ruben Borakov also testified, detailing the exact same pattern of chemical poisoning and robbery that had occurred during his date with the defendant. The defense argued that the state's case was entirely circumstantial, pointing to the lack of direct eyewitnesses to the actual poisoning or surveillance footage of the apartment. However, the overwhelming physical evidence, including the recovered stolen documents, the matching physical profiles of the two women, the presence of Viktoriya's deoxyribonucleic acid on the cheesecake container, and the scientific identification of phenazepam proved insurmountable. The jury deliberated for a mere 1 hour and 30 minutes before returning a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts, including attempted murder in the second degree, attempted assault in the first degree, assault in the second degree, unlawful imprisonment, and petty larceny. In April of the year 2023, the presiding judge sentenced Viktoriya Nasyrova to 21 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of post-release supervision, during which she launched an angry, profanity-laced outburst directed at the court. The successful prosecution of Viktoriya Nasyrova represents a profound triumph of justice, empathy, and persistence over calculated malice. The motives driving these crimes reveal a disturbing combination of extreme self-interest, financial greed, and a complete disregard for human life. In Russia, the motive was the acquisition of $50,000 of life savings, while in New York, the motive evolved into a desperate, terrifying attempt to evade justice by erasing another human being's identity and taking it as her own. The frequency of predatory crimes within immigrant communities highlights the critical importance of community vigilance. Perpetrators often target these enclaves because they understand that new immigrants may be unfamiliar with local laws, may hesitate to contact law enforcement due to cultural barriers or distrust of authority, and may rely heavily on informal networks of trust that can easily be breached. For law enforcement agencies, this landmark case offers invaluable lessons in modern investigative techniques and the necessity of looking beyond initial appearances. The initial staging of Olga's apartment as a suicide scene highlights how highly sophisticated criminals can easily manipulate the physical environment to mislead responders. To counter this, investigators must maintain a high degree of skepticism when confronted with scenes that appear unnaturally arranged, such as extreme indoor temperatures during summer months or excessively chaotic distributions of physical evidence. Furthermore, this case underscores the critical importance of interagency collaboration and the integration of advanced forensic technologies. Had the New York Police Department not partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to conduct specialized chemical screening, the presence of the rare international tranquilizer phenazepam might never have been discovered, leaving the prosecution without the crucial chemical evidence needed to prove attempted murder. The successful apprehension of Viktoriya also demonstrates the powerful impact of public-private cooperation. The analytical brilliance of private investigator Herman Weisberg, who meticulously dissected a single social media photograph and utilized the physical reflection in a pair of sunglasses to locate a rare luxury vehicle, highlights how digital forensics and creative field surveillance can break open seemingly cold cases. By tracking the digital footprints, social media endorsements, and environmental details of suspects, investigators can rapidly narrow down search parameters in vast metropolitan areas. Additionally, the determination of Nadia Ford, who spent years pursuing justice for her mother across 2 continents, serves as a powerful testament to the enduring strength of human love and the refusal to let the memory of a victim be forgotten. Ultimately, this tragic narrative offers profound life lessons for communities everywhere, emphasizing the vital balance between maintaining a warm, supportive community and exercising prudent personal safety. While the shared bonds of language and heritage are beautiful aspects of cultural enclaves, individuals must remain cautious when disclosing personal financial success, residential details, or the location of valuable identification documents to acquaintances. It is a reminder to trust one's personal instincts, just as Olga had felt a passing hesitation before accepting an unscheduled appointment on her day off. The story concludes not on a note of fear or despair, but on one of profound healing and resilience. Olga Tesvik's remarkable journey of physical and emotional recovery, culminating in her decision to forgive her attacker for her own peace of mind, illustrates the incredible capacity of the human spirit to overcome trauma and reclaim a life of joy and purpose, proving that the light of justice and human goodness will always prevail over the darkest of designs. The deceptive nature of trust in modern metropolitan areas presents a unique challenge for law enforcement and communities alike. In a city as vast and diverse as New York City, close-knit immigrant enclaves often provide a sense of security, cultural comfort, and mutual support for those who have traveled far from their homelands to pursue the American dream. However, this natural kinship can also be exploited by highly calculated and manipulative individuals. The case of Viktoriya Nasyrova, an international fugitive who engaged in a sophisticated crime spree across multiple boroughs, serves as a profound study in criminal psychology, systemic vulnerability, and the relentless pursuit of justice. By analyzing the motives behind these crimes, the critical clues that led to the perpetrator's apprehension, the sophistication and ultimate failures of the criminal mind, and the vital lessons for Beote, hot citizens, and law enforcement, we can better understand how to prevent such tragic events and improve the swiftness of judicial intervention. To understand why these cases occur with disturbing frequency, one must first examine the psychological and practical motives of the perpetrator. In the case of Viktoriya Nasyrova, the primary motives were twofold: financial greed and self-preservation through identity theft. Having fled her home country of Russia to escape a murder charge involving her former neighbor, Alla Alexenko, Nasyrova found herself in the United States with an expiring visa and the constant threat of international extradition hanging over her. Her survival in a foreign country depended on her ability to secure funds and, more importantly, to completely erase her past. This desperate need for a new life led her to target Olga Tezvik, a young Ukrainian woman who shared a similar physical appearance, hair color, and cultural background. By permanently eliminating Tezvik and stealing her personal documents, including her passport and work authorization card, Nasyrova believed she could seamlessly assume a new, clean identity that would allow her to remain in the United States indefinitely, completely shielded from the International Criminal Police Organization and Russian authorities. The frequency of hot predatory crimes in immigrant communities is deeply rooted in the sociological dynamics of these neighborhoods. Newcomers to a foreign country often face language barriers, systemic isolation, and a general distrust of local authorities, which naturally drives them to seek out and trust individuals who speak their native tongue and share their cultural heritage. This shared identity creates an automatic sense of kinship, lowering the natural defenses that people typically maintain around strangers. Nasyrova expertly exploited this vulnerability, presenting herself as a successful businesswoman, a sympathetic confidante, or a friendly client. Furthermore, many of her male victims were targeted through online dating platforms under the guise of romantic encounters or specialized adult role-play preferences. The perpetrator understood that the clandestine and deeply personal nature of these meetings would create a powerful barrier of social embarrassment and shame, deterring the victims from reporting the poisonings and robberies to the police. This calculation allowed her to operate with perceived impunity for months, as she correctly predicted that many of her victims would choose to suffer in silence rather than expose their private lives to public scrutiny. The investigation into Nasyrova's crimes highlights the critical role of unconventional clues and collaborative effort in tracking down a highly elusive offender. When the local police departments were initially stymied by a lack of physical evidence and the mysterious nature of the illnesses suffered by the victims, several key details ultimately broke the case open. The first was the remarkable tenacity of Nadia Ford, the daughter of the Russian homicide victim, who refused to let her mother's memory be forgotten. Ford's independent analysis of traffic camera footage and cellular telephone records in Russia established the initial link to Nasyrova. When Nasyrova fled to the United States, Ford's determination brought her to hire a private investigator, Herman Weisberg, whose meticulous digital forensic work proved to be the turning point in the domestic search. Weisberg's breakthrough came from a highly detailed analysis of the perpetrator's social media footprint. Despite her status as an international fugitive, Nasyrova's overconfidence led her to maintain an active presence on social media platforms, where she frequently posted photographs showcasing a luxurious lifestyle. By examining the background details of these images, specifically the reflection in her mirrored aviator sunglasses, the private investigator was able to identify the unique interior stitching and a distinct dashboard clock of a Chrysler 300 vehicle. Through tireless physical surveillance of parking structures and neighborhoods associated with the local businesses she had publicly interacted with online, the investigation team successfully located the vehicle and tracked the suspect to her residence in Brooklyn. This brilliant utilization of modern digital clues, combined with old-fashioned physical surveillance, demonstrates that even the most cautious criminals often leave passive digital breadcrumbs that can be pieced together by analytical minds. The physical evidence recovered following Nasyrova's arrest provided the definitive link to her crimes. Inside her luggage, which was still packed in her boyfriend's apartment, investigators discovered Olga Tezvik's stolen jewelry, Ukrainian passport, and employment authorization card. The most chilling detail was the presence of a photograph of Nasyrova tucked inside Tezvik's passport, illustrating the physical similarity between the two women and confirming the theory of planned identity theft. Additionally, the forensic analysis of a container containing cheesecake crumbs recovered from Tezvik's home yielded the perpetrator's deoxyribonucleic acid. Although initial local laboratory tests failed to identify any controlled substances within the cake, a secondary, more advanced analysis conducted by the Department of Homeland Security revealed the presence of phenazepam. Phenazepam, a highly potent sedative developed in the Soviet Union that is not typically screened in standard United States narcotics panels, acted as the definitive chemical weapon used to tranquilize the victims, explaining the severe amnesia, disorientation, and near-fatal physiological drops they experienced. The sophistication of this criminal was matched only by her profound psychological flaws and eventual carelessness. Nasyrova exhibited a high degree of sociopathic calculation, particularly in the staging of her crime scenes. In her attempt to eliminate Olga Tezvik, she did not merely administer a lethal dose of phenazepam. She meticulously arranged the environment to mimic a tragic self-harm scenario. She scattered loose pills around the bedroom, dressed the unconscious victim in lingerie, and adjusted the apartment's heating system to an extreme temperature of over 80 degrees. This physical manipulation was designed to accelerate the metabolic absorption of the drug and hasten physical demise, while simultaneously presenting first responders with a textbook scene of a troubled individual taking her own life. This level of planning shows a cold, detached intellect capable of treating human lives as mere obstacles to be cleared. However, the criminal's downfall was hastened by the classic pitfall of overconfidence and an inability to resist the allure of attention. Despite her sophisticated efforts to evade justice, Nasyrova could not help but seek validation and attention, both through her social media posts and her subsequent interactions with the media while held at Rikers Island. Her pathological lying led her to spin elaborate, contradictory narratives of government conspiracies and forced cooperation with foreign syndicates, believing her charisma would allow her to manipulate public perception and escape accountability. This disconnect from reality ultimately worked against her, as the mounting physical evidence, the consistency of the victim's testimonies, and her own public statements painted a clear picture of a predatory individual whose sophisticated schemes were ultimately undone by her arrogance and the physical evidence she left behind, such as the cheesecake container in the trash bin. From these harrowing events, several profound life lessons can be drawn to help communities protect themselves from similar predatory schemes. First and foremost is the importance of maintaining strict vigilance over personal identification documents and sensitive personal information. In an era where identity theft can have catastrophic consequences, safeguarding passports, birth certificates, and employment cards is as critical as securing financial assets. Furthermore, individuals must learn to trust their intuition and maintain healthy boundaries, even within familiar cultural or professional settings. Olga Tezvik's tragic experience began when she ignored her initial hesitation and agreed to provide an emergency cosmetic service to a client at her private residence on her day off. While acts of kindness and professional dedication are admirable, establishing firm boundaries between professional services and private living spaces is a vital protective measure. Additionally, the case highlights the necessity of cultural and community education regarding the dangers of digital platforms and the realities of predatory behavior. Close-knit communities must foster environments where individuals feel safe reporting suspicious behavior, financial exploitation, or unusual illnesses without fear of judgment, loss of face, or legal repercussions. By reducing the social stigma associated with being targeted by scams or dating deceptions, victims can be encouraged to come forward immediately, thereby preventing serial offenders from continuing their harmful patterns. Mutual aid, open communication, and collective awareness are the strongest defenses against those who seek to exploit the natural trust that binds a community together. To catch such sophisticated perpetrators more rapidly in the future, law enforcement agencies can draw valuable insights from this complex investigation. One of the primary areas for improvement is the acceleration and standardization of forensic toxicology protocols, particularly when dealing with international substances. The initial delay in identifying the poison used on Olga Tizvik and Ruben Borakov occurred because standard local hospital and police laboratory screens did not include phenazepam, a pharmaceutical agent primarily manufactured outside the United States. Establishing a more comprehensive, globally integrated database of synthetic compounds and pharmaceutical substances would allow local medical staff and investigators to quickly identify rare toxins, saving critical time in both victim treatment and criminal profiling. Furthermore, the integration of local police databases with federal and international law enforcement agencies must be streamlined. The fact that Nasyrova was able to commit multiple larcenies and poisonings across different boroughs before the cases were connected points to a need for more robust pattern recognition software within metropolitan police departments. When multiple individuals present to various hospitals with identical, unexplained symptoms of severe disorientation, memory loss, and subsequent property loss, an automated system should immediately flag these occurrences as a potential pattern, regardless of the borough or precinct in which they occur. Taking initial larceny reports seriously, even when they involve dating applications or alternative lifestyles, is essential, as these seemingly minor thefts are often the precursor to far more dangerous criminal activities. Finally, the successful resolution of this case underscores the immense value of public-private partnerships in modern criminal investigations. The collaboration between the New York City Police Department and private investigator Herman Weisberg demonstrated how specialized private resources, digital analysis, and focused dedication can complement the broad authority and systemic capabilities of public law enforcement. By establishing formal channels for sharing vetted digital intelligence and utilizing the unique skill sets of specialized civilian analysts, law enforcement agencies can significantly reduce the time required to track down fugitives who employ sophisticated evasion tactics. Ultimately, the conviction of Viktoriya Nasyrova in the year 2023, resulting in a sentence of 21 years behind bars, represents a profound victory for the rule of law, the dedication of the investigating forces, and the resilience of the survivors. Olga Tizvik's journey from a near-death experience to standing courageously in a courtroom, to testify against her attacker, is a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit. Her ability to find personal closure and offer forgiveness, not as an endorsement of the perpetrator's actions, but as a means to reclaim her own peace of mind, offers a deeply inspiring message of hope and emotional recovery. By honoring the efforts of the survivors, the relentless devotion of families like Nadia Ford, and the tireless work of the detectives and investigators, we reinforce the fundamental truth that justice, though sometimes delayed by the complex maneuvers of the deceptive, will inevitably prevail through diligence, community awareness, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. The human capacity for trust is Beotehat, our greatest strength and our most profound vulnerability. In the sprawling, diverse metropolis of New York City, this vulnerability is often amplified within close-knit immigrant communities. When individuals leave their homelands to seek a new beginning in a foreign land, they naturally gravitate toward those who share their language, their heritage, and their cultural touchstones. This shared background creates an immediate, unspoken kinship, a sense of safety that can unfortunately be exploited by predatory individuals who recognize that shared identity can disarm even the most cautious souls. In the year 2016, the city of New York became the stage for a sequence of events so bizarre and calculated that it challenged the seasoned instincts of the New York Police Department and left the public captivated. It was a case that began with a mysterious medical emergency in the borough of Queens and gradually unraveled to reveal a web of stolen identities, international flight, and a cold-blooded disregard for human life. On a warm afternoon in late August of the year 2016, in a quiet residential neighborhood of Queens, an 86-year-old landlord grew concerned after not seeing his tenant for 2 days. The tenant, a 35-year-old Ukrainian immigrant named Olga Tizvik, was a dedicated cosmetologist who had recently established a promising career as a lash technician. She was a warm, well-liked member of the local Russian-speaking community, a person who had built a quiet, respectable life for herself after arriving in the United States of America in the year 2014. When the landlord entered her apartment to check on her well-being, he was met with a deeply unsettling scene. The apartment was stiflingly hot, with the thermostat turned up to an extreme temperature of over 80 degrees. Inside her bedroom, Olga was found unresponsive, lying on her bed in delicate sleepwear. Scattered across the floor and around the bed were numerous prescription pills, creating an immediate visual impression of a self-inflicted tragedy. First responders were summoned to the scene through a panicked emergency call. To the paramedics and the initial police officers who arrived, the scene presented all the classic, tragic hallmarks of a deliberate decision to end one's own life.
The hat.
Aiga hat, heat, the scattered pills, and the state of the young woman all pointed toward a deeply troubled individual who had staged a dramatic final act. Olga was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, her body on the very brink of shutdown. Doctors in the emergency room worked tirelessly to stabilize her, noting that she was incredibly fortunate to have been discovered when she was, as another hour of exposure to those conditions likely would have resulted in her demise. Yet, as Olga slowly regained consciousness, the medical staff encountered a series of perplexing anomalies. The first mystery arose from the standard diagnostic protocols. A comprehensive toxicology screen of Olga's blood and urine was performed to identify the specific pharmaceutical compounds in her system, a step crucial for determining the correct course of treatment. Surprisingly, the laboratory results returned entirely negative, showing no elevated levels of any common controlled substances or toxic agents. This negative result was deeply inconsistent with the physical evidence of the scattered pills in her apartment. Furthermore, as Olga began to recover from her profound state of disorientation, weakness, and memory loss, she adamantly insisted to the medical staff and her friends that she had never harbored any desire to harm herself. She was a woman who loved her life, her work, and her newfound community. She had no reason to seek an end to her journey. The situation took a more sinister turn when Olga's sister, Irina, arrived in New York City after receiving a worried call from Olga's friends. Upon inspecting the apartment, Irina immediately realized that several of Olga's most valuable possessions were missing. These were not items a person intending to end their life would discard or misplace. They were her Ukrainian passport, her United States work authorization card, her cash savings, her personal jewelry, and even her expensive perfumes. Irina promptly reported these missing items as a major theft to the local police precinct. When detectives visited the apartment to interview Olga, who was still struggling significant cognitive fog and physical fatigue, they began to piece together the events preceding her sudden illness. Olga recalled that on her day off, a Sunday, she had agreed to perform an emergency cosmetic service for one of her regular clients, a woman she knew as Viktoriya. Viktoriya was a well-dressed, seemingly successful business owner who claimed to run a beauty salon in Moscow. Over the course of several months, Viktoriya had built a friendly, highly communicative relationship with Olga, frequently sharing stories of her life and successes. On that particular Sunday, Viktoriya had insisted that she urgently needed her eyelashes touched up before a planned trip to Mexico, persuading Olga to overlook her usual rule of not seeing clients at her private residence. As a gesture of gratitude, Viktoriya had arrived at the apartment carrying a box of cheesecake from a well-known bakery in Brooklyn. According to Olga's Fangji recollections, Viktoriya's behavior during the visit was somewhat unusual. She opened the bakery box and enthusiastically offered the dessert, taking a couple of pieces for herself. Viktoriya had remarkable speed before presenting the final piece to Olga. Out of polite hospitality, Olga accepted and consumed the slice of cake. Within a matter of minutes, a wave of intense nausea and dizziness overcame her. She attempted to find her bed, telling Viktoriya that she felt incredibly unwell. The last coherent image Olga remembered was Viktoriya offering to clean up the mess with paper towels, as Olga drifted into a deep, dark state of unconsciousness. When detectives first heard this narrative, they faced a difficult challenge. To an outside observer, the story of a poisoned pastry sounded like something out of a sensationalist novel rather than a typical urban crime. The negative toxicology screen from the hospital and the lack of a known chemical agent in the initial testing of the cheesecake container, which detectives had recovered from the apartment as trash bin, left the authorities with little actionable evidence. While the genetic material found on the container did not match Olga, pointing instead to an unidentified female contributor, the lack of a last name or address for the client named Viktoriya left the investigation stalled as a simple, open case of larceny. For Olga, the emotional aftermath was a harrowing ordeal. The sense of violation was compounded by a chilling communication she received a week after her release from the hospital. Her phone rang, and a text message appeared from Viktoriya, inquiring about her well-being and asking why she had been unreachable. When Olga bravely confronted Viktoriya over the phone, accusing her of theft and poisoning, Viktoriya S response was cold and defiant, challenging Olga to take her accusations to the police. This arrogant reaction left Olga living in constant fear, requiring her friends to escort her to and from her home, always looking over her shoulder in anticipation of a secondary attempt on her life. The breakthrough that would connect Olga's experience to a broader pattern of predatory behavior came not from traditional police work, but from the tight-knit network of the local community. Upon returning to work in mid-September, Olga reluctantly shared a brief summary of her mysterious illness with a regular customer. The customer was struck by the striking similarities between Olga's ordeal and a story she had recently heard from an acquaintance named Ruben Borakov. Ruben, a longtime resident of a Russian-speaking neighborhood in Brooklyn, had experienced a remarkably similar medical emergency over the summer.